Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Let me turn off the studio speakers and just go through the headphones. Hello, everyone. How are you? Happy Saturday. If you're anything like I am, it is cold outside. Baby, it's cold outside. Inside I will stay to read to you today. It's frigid outside, like -20 with wind chill. I can hear the wind blowing, but I'm inside with you. Well, I'm happy to have you guys here with me tonight as we return to The Flow, a hedonist guide to Buddhism, meditation, and travels in Thailand, a travelogue memoir by Lawrence Davidson. So we've done a lot so far in this book. We've discovered what it's all about. we The last chapter we went into talked about Watts. We've gone to Chiang Rai. We've gone to Chiang Mai. He has been to I Monastery and studied Buddhism. Got ordained as a monk. Got to shave his head. And when I say his head, that's everything eyebrows included. And got to go to festivals and go and collect alms as the good Buddhist monks do, and experience all sorts of things in and throughout Thailand. One of the resounding themes in here, and anybody who has been listening for a little while knows, our author, Mr. Larry Davidson, likes himself some food. He is not a chef. However, he does play one on TV. Um, loves to cook, and food is definitely a love language for him. We have experienced lots of different cuisine from places across Asia. He has had, let's see, Indian food, Chinese food, Thai food, food from probably Laos and Myanmar and all of those places over there, as he has explored through back alleys and Indian food. Don't forget Indian food. And just explored throughout and found places that are off the beaten track for most tourists, but are perfect for somebody who wants to experience the food of a place up front and personal. So there has been a lot of that in here, and it's been really interesting to hear through the different foods and experiences that he has had while traveling in these different places. Tonight, we start into our chapter on Bangkok. Well, right now we are 52% of the way through the book. We are starting chapter, I want to say this is 14. We are starting chapter 14. We are 52% of the way through this book. So we've read 13 chapters, plus the introduction, plus the greeting, 52% of the way through. By the time we finish this chapter, we're going to be 81% of the way through. This, my lovely friends, is a very long chapter. We will not get through all of it tonight. There is just no way. So we will get through what we can. And the way that I do this chapter may be slightly different than the way I've done many of the others because it is so long. We won't even again, make it through this entire chapter this evening. He has it broken out, I want to say, into 3 different sections. My goal is to get through section 1, next reading, do section 2, the reading after that, do section 3, and if we still have time at that point, continue on to chapter 15. However, we will see how it goes. Because they're such long readings and I won't be able to take a break in there, I may force a break. And just when I record the videos in the back, or as you know, I record the videos. When I post the videos in the background, I'll do a little movie magic and put them all together. So it's just the one part of it. As always, thank you wherever you happen to be joining us from. I am streaming on, let's see, where all am I on? Twitch, YouTube, Kick, X, and Rumble. Hey, 5 platforms. Let's see if I even get 5 people listening tonight. People are more into the replays of these, I think, than the live readings, but hey, I like the live readings, and I hope you guys do too. Take a moment to get out there and support the author. You can find his book on Amazon, more about him on Amazon. He has his own webpage, he has his own Substack. Get out there and check it out, and make sure you are supporting him. And hey, remember to subscribe. Support me as well, would you? I appreciate it. It allows me to continue to provide these readings for you. One final reminder before we get started tonight. We are located in Thailand for this reading. That means we're going to have Thai words. We have had Buddhist and Pali words. Hell, he's throwing Latin words at me. I will very likely mispronounce some of them. Know that I do it out of ignorance, not out of malice. And I will do my best to pronounce them correctly, as best as I can do so. You are welcome to jump into the chat and provide a little gentle correction if you would like to do so. I can't promise I will see it during the stream, but if I can, I will correct the pronunciations. If not, just know that it does come from a place of respect. And I appreciate your patience with my mispronunciations as we go. Sometimes English itself is hard enough, let alone a language that has sounds we don't make in English. So I will do what I can. I will do my best. But if I mess up, hey, we'll just roll with it. And now, wherever you happen to be, grab a blanket, grab a hot or cold drink, put your feet up, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we dive into our next reading of The Flow, a hedonist guide to Buddhism, meditation, and travels in Thailand, a travelogue memoir by Lawrence Davidson. As we start into Chapter 14, Bangkok's Siren Song. Money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a ticket to Bangkok. Anonymous. That, my friend, is some straight up no BS sage advice. Bangkok, a city of massive scale, loaded with mysteries waiting to be revealed. It was my first stop in Thailand for 2 nights, and I hated it. Hate is a strong word, but at that point in my life, I felt it viscerally. I didn't know a soul, or where the good stuff was. It winds up the good stuff surrounds you. And I was in no mood for a place so charged, so intense, so vast and full of possibility, when all I wanted to do was run like a crazed man into the jungle, ripping off my clothes and live in a cave up in the hills, never thinking of love again. Returning south to that massive realm of possibility reminded me that Levin Helm of the band once said about New York in The Last Waltz that some places don't welcome you so much as test your nerve. They hand you a beating, you get your ass kicked, lick your wounds, and, if you're lucky, fall in love with the whole mess anyway. That is exactly what happened to me. Up north, life had been chill, sabai. Less bustle, more reflection, a quieter pace of discovery where the rules felt unspoken. But Bangkok? Bangkok doesn't whisper. Bangkok yells at the top of its lungs and doesn't care if you're ready for it. Since the monastery, I'd been hanging out in the slower rhythms of Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, and Chiang Sen. Up in the mountains, I'd been sipping tea, eating jok and noodles, and contemplating life's bigger questions alongside a small river. The transition south felt like jumping into the eye of a roaring whirlpool that had no bottom. Cities thrill me, plain and simple. From nightlife to day life, the cultural options a major metropolis offers are the best kind of education. Raw, chaotic, unbridled, and unforgettable. They enlighten you in the ways of the world, artistically, culinarily, politically, socially, or just by teaching you how to cross a frenzied boulevard without dying. I've been lucky to soak up the gritty edges and elegance of cities like San Francisco and New York, London, Guadalajara, Paris, Barcelona, Auckland, and more. Places that either invite you in or size you up. Some cities charm you slow, others throw elbows. I thought I knew the game. How to land, find the rhythm, learn the rules even when they weren't obvious. But Bangkok didn't play by rules. It didn't whisper or wink. It smacked my face, blasted the doors open, and dared me to step through. Until this trip, I'd never stepped foot onto the Asian continent and never seen, except in videos, anything like Bangkok. Mexico City, Mumbai, or Ho Chi Minh come to mind as comps, but for pure unabridged size and manic delirium, those first 2 nights in Bangkok filled my sails, then shredded them. To say I didn't enjoy the experience would be incorrect, but I was also not in a state of mind to take advantage of that intense energy injection. When I returned from northern Thailand, Bangkok was in full festive swing. Christmas lights and holiday music fought for dominance against the ever present hum of traffic and life. I knew I was staying put for a while, enough time to see what Bangkok could teach me. I rented an apartment along the Chao Phraya River, away from the touristy intensity of Sukhumvit, Asoke, Tong Lo, and Nana neighborhoods. The Sunreno serviced apartments was a far cry from the glitzy hotels downtown. It wasn't 5-star or luxurious, though it was very spaciously comfortable. But it had something better: peace and quiet, a rare commodity in that city. In the Bang Ko Lame district, life moves at a slower pace. For Bangkok. The clerk at the front desk gave me a skeptical look when I mentioned my long term stay. She said most travelers weren't interested in that part of Bangkok. It wasn't glamorous, sexy, or flashy, and there wasn't much to do except for Asiatique, the giant riverside shopping plaza across the street. But Sunreno was tucked out of the way quiet, and that was exactly what I needed. A place to settle in before diving head first into the madness. I checked into room number 9, which wound up being a fully furnished, spacious apartment, one generously proportioned and boasting a decent, albeit poorly equipped kitchen, enough closet and cupboard space to stash a battalion's worth of gear, a broad writing desk, a comfy king-sized bed flanked by side tables with reading lamps, and a seating alcove with floor-to-ceiling windows that made me feel like I was in the middle of a voyeuristic city documentary. The only thing missing was a window telescope for a voyeuristic spy on the neighbors. Add to that a balcony that was spacious and solid with 2 chairs and a small table. The modern bathroom had a walk in glass shower that would have made anyone with a love for steam feel right at home. The place was older, but had a perfunctory elegance, and with daily housekeeping, it felt more like a pied de terre than a temporary crash pad. I shot the bartender from Chiang Mai a quick thank you text. He'd hooked me up in exchange for my teaching him how to make a proper Manhattan. His was, I'll graciously say, substandard. He had invited me behind the bar to teach him, and in exchange, when he found out I was heading south, told me that his extended family owned the Sunreno. The swap was an excellent exchange of goodwill. He raved about my Manhattan. I completely unpacked both bags, shoved my empty roll on into a closet and my day pack into another, because I was going to pretend I wasn't living out of luggage for the next 2 weeks. I ironed my button down shirts and multiple pairs of linen drawstring pants. Yes, pants, because I had use for a higher level of sophistication at times, where shorts and t shirts just wouldn't do. Chores done, it was time for dinner and a drink. And that's where I made my first Bangkok rookie mistake. The doorman, Wing, was still sizing me up and did what any well intentioned hotel staff would do. He sent me across the street to Asiatique, the neighborhood's version of ground floor retail therapy. I later learned that most short stay guests spent every evening there, which should have been a red flag, but my curiosity got the best of me. After all, the Thai love these modern upscale malls. So, like the agreeable guy I am, I thought, hey, when in Bangkok, right? The driveway to Sunreno stretched 25 yards from the lobby door to Charon Krung Road, and at 6 p.m., I thought I was about to embark on a leisurely stroll across the street. I walked out of the hotel's manicured drive, decorated with hanging wall vines and koi ponds, only to be greeted by the full force of Bangkok mayhem. Cars, buses, and tuk-tuks were gridlocked as far as the eye could see in both directions. You'd think you could just slip between the vehicles like some smooth seasoned local, but no. Factor in innumerable scooters and motorcycles darting in and out of that parking lot of a thoroughfare, and you'd quickly end up in traction. Looking up and down the boulevard, I had the sinking feeling that every single vehicle in Bangkok was making a pilgrimage to Asiatique. I would have to use every last bit of my how to cross a busy street in Thailand skill set to survive. I made my move and made it across. With a broad grin and two enthusiastic thumbs up from the parking lot attendant manning Asiatique's parking lot exit, directly across from the Sunreno driveway entrance/exit, I felt like the king of the world. Since it was still early and he wasn't in full traffic directing mode, I stopped for a chat. His name was Pravat, and he was the human embodiment of Bangkok's energy as we looked upon the river of lights as it snaked toward retail paradise. Pravat was from Mae Fa Luang in Chiang Rai province, and when I told him how much I loved that part of the country, how it had gotten under my skin, his face lit up like someone had just handed him a happy puppy. We stood there on the sidewalk swapping stories about what and where I'd eaten, where I'd wandered, and I told him how the people up north, his people, had made me feel like not like a tourist, but a family friend. When I mentioned I'd spent several nights cruising the night bazaar, he grinned and asked if I'd bought anything. I lifted my shirt hem to show him the incredible woven leather belt I'd picked up, and his smile widened. That's my brother's work, he said proudly. When I described the vendor, the round, easygoing guy with a laugh that could fill a room, Pravat pressed his hands together in delighted recognition. That's my dada. He wanted to know how his father looked, and I gave him the honest truth. Sharp, witty, healthy, and kind. The kind of man who makes you feel like you've known him for years after just a few minutes. We shared a cigarette, standing at the edge of Bangkok's chaos, and for a moment the city felt smaller. He leaned in at one point, lowering his voice, offering secrets to a friend. I can get you anything you want. Anything. What are you looking for? I smiled, pausing just long enough for him to wonder, before saying, enlightenment. He burst out laughing, a full, genuine laugh that probably still echoes in his memory, as it does mine, when he thinks about the guy with the belt from his father's stall. You're on your own for that one, Farang, he laughed. Asiatique, the riverfront. The name's a mouthful, like the place itself. What stands now as one of Bangkok's glitziest nighttime destinations once served a very different purpose. Long before it was boutiques and booze gardens, it was maritime hustle. Back in 1887, the East Asiatic Company, a Danish trading and shipping outfit, chose that 12-acre patch on a broad bend of the Chao Phraya River as its Southeast Asia base. And it wasn't just piers and warehouses. It was an integrated ecosystem. This was a working port. Every trade tied to the shipping and fishing industries had a stake in the operation. Rope makers spun their lines by hand. Sailmakers stitched broad canvas through monsoon seasons. Woodworkers and blacksmiths hammered, sawed, and forged the boats that needed building while fixing those that had already put to sea. The daily catch came in like clockwork and funneled out again just as fast. Wholesalers, hawkers, families with carts, all part of the buzz. It was loud, dirty, necessary work. It fed and funded the neighborhood and beyond for decades. But by the mid 20th century, the tide was turning. In 1947, the company began its slow decline and withdrawal. Global shipping was changing. Bangkok's industrial shoreline was moving downstream, and the East Asiatic dockyards were left to rot as everything does in tropical heat and humidity. What followed was decades of decline. Vacant buildings, rusted cranes, broken windows, weeds growing tall, splitting cracks wide into the asphalt, then silence where there was once industry. Suan Loom Night Bazaar briefly revived the area, a flash of life with its night markets and cheap thrills. But that packed up and moved on by the late 2000s. Then came the developers. The plan? Repurpose the bones of industry into a new kind of commerce: shopping, spectacle, gluttony, and consumption. They razed most of the outbuildings but left the larger warehouses standing. Those were gutted and polished into raw brick and beam showcases full of restaurants and bars. Where workshops once clanged with hammers and the voices of thousands of workers filled the air, new grid blocks sprang up. Neon and fairy light lit warrens designed to host small stall businesses. Open air mall meets Instagram trap. The concept worked. When Asiatique opened in late 2012, much of it had already been leased. Sexy buzz sells. Designed as an upscale twilight/night market, most vendors opened up around 4 p.m. Come nightfall, it glows. Strings of lights everywhere, sculpted, landscaped walkways, colorful awnings floating above with multicolored lanterns and upside down umbrellas creating a magical overworld. The air heavy with grilled meats, curry, seafood, soap, and perfume as riverside breezes soften the crush of people. So many people. It really is a sight. The north end of the complex is home to maintenance sheds and the prime space parking lot, right next to a towering white Ferris wheel, the kind with enclosed gondolas and spokes lit up like a carnival prize. Its center glows with a neon green logo of Chang Brewery, a reminder that even your sense of wonder comes branded. There's also a carousel with ornate horses and a haunted house ride. The playground is padded and landscaped like a miniature park. The real business, though, happens in the middle. Over 200 restaurants, 1,500 vendors, and a tragically comical array of ways to spend money. Everything from silk scarves to street massages, fish pedicures. You dunk your feet into a tank of voracious little fish as they eat away all the dead skin from your shins down. To high end cocktails. Want some British darts? Sure. Need a 75,000 baht La Povina plumbed 4-head espresso machine? Got that. Would you like to take home a large iguana or an endangered parrot? Be my guest. Big C has a huge hypermarket conveniently located close to the main road. Pharmacies tuck into corners, leather goods, candles, incense, tourist t shirts, junky tchotchke, handmade soaps, custom perfumes, every kind and shape of Buddha from plastic to gold, and enough women's clothing and accessories to fill several Western department stores. If it fits in a suitcase, and even if it doesn't, they sell it. It's dazzling and expensive. Prices are geared toward camera toting rubes, visitors, and ties with fun money out for an evening in old Bangkok without the grit. And it's only getting bigger. Soon it'll include the Jurassic World immersive experience. Expect more crowds and dinosaurs. Lots of screeching dinosaurs. Which, of course, means lots of screeching humans, just to kick the din up a bit. My first night, I took it in quickly. Not for fun. Not yet. I was scoping out my surroundings. I made mental notes, which stalls were near the exit, which pharmacies looked stocked, where I might find this, that, or the other thing. By 6:45 p.m., it was swarming. I ducked out a side exit and took a left on Charon Krung Road, the air thick with street heat and exhaust fumes. The first place I spotted was a brick and mortar place with a sidewalk side hustle out front 50 feet from Asia Tech's back gate with fryers and steamer stations out front. Dim sum menus were slapped onto folding tables. The kind of place that promises nothing but might just surprise you. And they had Xiao Long Bao, soup dumplings, one of my culinary crack addictions. It was called Jing Jing Mala, and despite the promising setup, the food didn't quite hit. The dumplings were fine. The pad thai, utterly forgettable. The lychees with mango ice cream, though, that was the real deal. Fragrant, cold, tropically fruity, and just what I needed. As I ate, something curious caught my eye. Across the road to the north side of the Sunreno driveway, scooters kept slipping in and out of impossibly narrow passageways between buildings. Like ants vanishing into cracks in the sidewalk, their sudden reappearances piqued my curiosity. When I finished my meal, I decided to follow one of those slipstreams and see where it led. I stepped into a world I hadn't expected. The tight canal streets twisted and wound, snaking back behind the main drag like secret capillaries of the city. The homes here were built on stilts, perched above the water, their wooden and stucco structures held up by beams and dreams. Footbridges spanned the small canal, delicate veins leading to doorways that seemed as though they belonged to another time. Slightly crooked, but utterly charming. The roads were raised concrete walkways, elevated above the canal, just wide enough to let 2.5 scooters pass or a wide handcart squeezed by a cat. On either side, lush planters overflowed with greenery and flowers, while small flickering lights cast pools of warmth on wet stone. The occasional curl of cooking smoke rose lazily from windows, mingling with the scents of meat, garlic, basil, and chili, the aromas weaving through narrow passageways. It was quiet here, the sounds of the bustling main road replaced with the murmur of voices drifting from inside small homes. It was local and real, a kind of intimacy that Asiatique, with its bright lights and endless tourists, could never offer. I wandered, letting my feet lead me down winding alleys and quiet pathways, hoping to find some tucked away 2-seat bar or a family run noodle shop with a fridge full of cold lager. But no luck. Instead, I found halal carts, the scent of freshly baked bread wafting through the air, clinging to the humidity like an old friend. But drink? Nowhere to be found. That was a little frustrating. 3 hours later, sore and tired, but satisfied with my urban adventure, I stumbled back onto a main road and made my way back toward the river, the echo of the clack of walks and scooters plying the narrow lanes still buzzing in my ears like faint mosquitoes. There's a certain satisfaction in getting lost like that, No destination, no expectations. Just city life revealing itself to you in the quietest, most unexpected ways. I was getting to the end of a very long day. I still wanted a drink to celebrate my first night back in Bangkok. Reluctantly, I headed back into Asiatique for a tourist cocktail. There were a half a dozen quayside open air restaurants with bars, all of them upscale with prices to match. I settled on a place called the Crystal Grill House, which was architecturally and situationally beautiful. An ovate bar encased in a stylish black steel beam and glass building. It was the main entry to identical structures that ran along the riverfront, connected via offset landscaped and underlit paths. The vibe lent a romantic aura to the place. It looked much better than the restaurant down the way. I'll leave the choice to you. But when I see a place with a name like a bad marketing campaign and a cartoon dancing happy fish welcoming you in, run in any direction except towards the door. The maitre d', bartenders, and waitstaff at the Crystal Grill House were dressed to impress in crisp black and white attire, every crease sharp enough to slice a lime. I was doubly pleased to see their gin happened to be my favorite, Bombay Sapphire, in case you're curious. Always a promising sign. I ordered a martini. No nonsense, no gimmicks. Simply a proper, just off dry gin martini. I watched with quiet satisfaction as my BT stirred. Textbook perfect pour into a chilled martini stem. He knew what he was doing. That's rarer than it should be. Now, if you'll allow a brief aside on the subject of the martini, because someone needs to say it, I feel that someone should be me. The martini is not just a cocktail, it is the cocktail. Elegant in design, austere in composition, and, when done right, delicately symphonic in flavor. But here's the thing: real martinis require vermouth, dry vermouth. A whisper of it, yes, an eighth of an ounce will do, but it must be there. Without it, you're not drinking a martini. You're drinking an underdressed gin shot. And let's settle this while we're here. Martinis are made with gin, not vodka, gin. This is not up for debate. Ordering a vodka martini is like asking a string quartet to play without the strings. Don't try to impress your date or confuse your bartender with some hackneyed line like, just wave the vermouth over the glass, or show it a picture of vermouth. That shtick's as tired as it is misguided. If you're afraid of flavor, order water. As for garnishes, green olives with pimento? Absolutely. Lemon twist? A strong, respectful yes. Even both if you're bold and balanced. But any other stuffing? Garlic, blue cheese, chili, anchovies? Gets you a one-way ticket to martini purgatory. Dirty martini? No. Just no. That's not complex. That's brine and misinformation and the ruination of good gin. And if you sidle up next to me and order something called an apple teeny, or anything that ends in teeny that isn't an actual martini, I will move with disdain. I don't care if you're buying. The rise of the teeny trend has done more to erode the elegance and dignity of the martini than prohibition ever did. Oh, and stemless martini glasses? That's not innovation. That's heresy. If you can't commit to the stem, you don't deserve the drink. Rant over. The Crystal Grill House staff were friendly, courteous, and professional as I watched tickets being filled, as waitstaff whisked them away to the other structures along the waterfront. Customers were dining large on white tablecloths, gray velvet upholstered high back chairs, and crystal stemware. My martini was perfect. My martini was New York expensive. I stuck to one, knowing I'd need to find a different bar away from Asiatique. But for that first night after walking canal streets in that maze neighborhood for hours, it was magical. As I sat and sipped while Bing and Frank's Christmas classics piped through a hidden sound system. I moved outside to a seat along the river rail, gazing upon the cranked up nightlife plying the river in all forms of big and small party boats. Dance hall beats blasted while colored LEDs kept time with the pump of the thump that cranked out from each boat, while the glittering big city skyline framing the river pierced the night sky. Sometimes cliche is authentic. It was sublime. I woke early from a solid sleep, had some perfunctory instant coffee, replaced with real coffee went first on the shopping list. Got some journaling in, then realized halfway through a sentence that I was hungry as hell. With a full kitchen in my apartment, it made sense to stock up. First, breakfast. Second, Big C hypermarket. Charon Krung Road to the right was already buzzing its early morning get up and go. I didn't know the neighborhood at all, so it was time to explore. I passed a dozen street carts already doing brisk business, queues of locals fueling their morning. I took notes on who was cooking what and grabbed a bag of Kanam Krok, crispy fried coconut milk cakes as breakfast dessert, munching as I wandered. I expected to have to hunt for something gentle enough to coax, not shock, my stomach awake, because nothing says good morning like a whole fried fish slathered in fermented hot chili paste. Lunch? Yes. Breakfast? No. But less than 300 yards down the sidewalk, I saw it. Like the angel of breakfast had descended, whispered, "This way, my child," and nudged me toward salvation. Tuong Dim Sum didn't just appear. It beckoned, like a new friend who knew exactly what I needed and didn't make a big deal about it. It was a cavernous yet covered open air setup with around 100 four-top tables, many of them already filled with happy faces chopsticking edible packets of deliciousness with glee. The open kitchen was cruising like a machine firing on all cylinders. A dozen cooks, led by Chef Yip, who looked to be well into his 70s, hustling over flat tops, steamers, and woks. I'd found my place. Har Gao Hom Bao Jia Jiao Char Su Jiao Long Bao Xiao Mai Cha Zi Pai Ga Chung Juan Jia Kai Jiao Zi and Kong Yu Bing. Don't get hung up on the phonetic Chinese. These are the steamed and fried dim sum classics you already know and love. Each table had two order sheets on clipboards, one for food, one for drinks, and a cup of blunt pencils, holders for chopsticks and soup spoons, and a tray of fiery condiments. I filled in my sheets with more options than space inside my body, nodded to a server come busboy, and 10 minutes later, breakfast bliss landed in front of me. Was it the best dim sum ever? No. Was it solid, satisfying, and fast? Hell yes! And the cold, honey sweetened Chinese herbal tea was fantastic. I'd found my spot for the mornings I didn't want to eat in my apartment. I'd come prepared with reusable shopping bags, so after breakfast I waddled to the Big C hypermarket, conveniently located just inside the Asiatique grounds. I sidestepped Starbucks with the same energy I reserve for potholes and pyramid schemes, marveling at the miracle of how something so omnipresent could feel so devoid of soul. I stocked up on fresh pressed fruit juices, cream, and northern Thai Arabica coffee beans, yogurts, granola, mangoes, and watermelons, croissants, sweet French Normandy butter, the best butter in the world. Really, it is. Strawberry jam and Belgian chocolate, the true breakfast essential. Groceries in bags, I headed back to the apartment and loaded the fridge and pantry. I decided to find a park with a bench and bring my latest bookstore find. This was going to be one of those rare, deliciously indulgent days where time bowed out and nothing was important. A simple love letter to myself. As I was putting things away, something clicked. The night before, while winding through the canal alleys, I noticed a curious absence. No bars, but a lot of micro bakeries, but there were mosques, many of them. And just like that, it all made sense. Muslim neighborhood, halal food carts, no alcohol. No wonder I hadn't noticed a single local bar tucked into the maze. Damn, sometimes I'm a little slow on the uptake, okay? Green spaces, at least anywhere nearby, were not showing up on my phone map, but a five-star hotel with a residential tower known for exemplary luxury sat a mile down the road, perched by the riverside. With a reputation for world-class everything and impeccable discretion, I knew exactly what I was walking into, and I was more than ready to take advantage of the situation. I changed into olive linen slacks that whispered while I walked, slipped on my elegant yet practical coffee brown leather flip flops, and buttoned up a soft cream silk shirt that flows like water and catches the light just so. The look was deliberate, casual luxury, the kind of ensemble that says, "Yes, I belong here, and yes, I tip in cash." At the hotel's roadside entrance, I spotted a semi hidden path leading away from the drive, up to a grand jungle landscaped entrance. 10 feet in, and I'd left the city behind. Up and away upon broad stone steps that meandered through a literal urban jungle. At its terminus, a gracious doorman opened a 20-foot door without a word. I wandered in, unnoticed and unbothered. Inside was marble, silk, huge teak wood furniture, and quiet wealth. After wandering the main floor, checking out the oversized grandeur, gazing into Fendi, Dior, and Hermes shops, then into an art gallery which led me past cascading ponds and toward the riverside patio, I paused to study a few modern pieces. Not my taste, but as the saying goes, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably art. The garden stretched along the river, with private shaded nooks tucked between palm fronds and tropical blooms. I found one with a perfect view of the Chao Phraya, half shadowed, serenaded by birdsong. I, ca- I cracked open David Sedaris's Barrel Fever, a collection of terrifyingly sarcastic essays. The server stopped by. I ordered a quad shot latte and a cucumber infused sparkling water. A few minutes later, a cart rolled quietly up to my little alcove. The barista plugged into a hidden outlet buried in the shrubbery. A linen covered side table was laid out, and soon enough, a steaming latte appeared next to me in heavy porcelain. I sipped, read, listened, watched as the slow river traffic drifted by. Barge boats collecting dislodged aquatic plant rafts, long tail river taxis roaring by, enormous long flotillas of barges laden with rice, guided by tugs, as the tour boats honked for space. I melted into stillness. Nothing to do, nothing wanted or needed. It was a lovely day. Back at the apartment later that afternoon, I took a long, luxurious shower, letting the warm water wash away the residue of the day. The kind of shower that stretched time and cleared my head. It wasn't until I was toweling off that I thought about what I'd do for dinner. No plan, no map. I walked out the door, turned left instead of right, and let fate give me directions for the evening. The neighborhood had shifted with the hour. What had been sleepy, quiet storefronts earlier were now alive with light and life. The air smelled different, richer, heavier, laced with the scent of street food, marijuana, and coffee, mingling with the faintest breeze. Asiatique was waking up, the river of light stretching farther than the night before, and the city felt like it was just about to burst into a Broadway spectacle. And then I saw them. As Jerry sang in Scarlet Begonias, sometimes a guiding light shows up in the strangest of places. It's all about the lens you look through. At a fresh fruit shop that looked like it had been arranged by an artist with a keen eye for color and shape, balance and perspective, a rainbow of tropical fruit beckoned. But at the very heart of the display, resting like precious jewels amidst the glistening melons and mangoes, papayas, pineapples, and rambutan, was the queen of all fruits, mangosteen. They were on my bucket list before I ever left the States. And there they were. Deep purple orbs, the size of tangerines, glossy like fresh black plum skin, radiated a floral Chinese five spice and honeyed wildflower sweet perfume that hit me like a delicate kiss. I stopped dead in my tracks. I'm pretty sure I looked half witted, possibly drooling. This was fruit transcendence personified, and I wanted them. A woman appeared from inside the shop, Chalermwan, which I learned later meant celebrated beauty, a name she wore as effortlessly as the glowing smile on her face. I was too caught up in the vibrant piles of fruit and the serene, hypnotic way she moved to pin down her name the first time, but I asked again just to make sure I would come to a close approximation of it was literally foreign to my ears. Chal Wan, she repeated slowly, so my brain could catch up. I told her my name, which she nailed the first time. What a great first impression, huh? She pointed to the mangosteens, her eyes questioning mine, then spoke in rapid Thai, her voice melodic. Whether she was inviting me to indulge or daring me to pick the best one, like a game, I didn't know. But I stepped closer like that little waif Oliver asking for more. Her English was halting. My I was acting like an idiot. She was covered head to toe in the dusty, dirty detritus of a busy fruit stall, but her laughing eyes and smile were enough for me to stammer out a "Sabati Krab," which made her eyes brighten, and smile, and that smile was radiant. She was dirty. She wasn't just radiant. She was stunning. Her physical presence caught me off guard, but what really knocked me back was how present she was, how she owned every inch of space between us. It felt like there was no one else on the street. I fumbled with my translator app, the weight of the mangosteen and my deep yearning for it on full display. She looked at me with obvious bemusement as I clumsily confessed the depth of my desire for her mangosteens. And when she laughed, it was warm and unhurried, an invitation into something simple. Without another word, she snapped open a lock blade knife with the precision of someone who had honed that motion 1,000 times. She tapped the flat of the blade against firm purple skins like a jeweler inspecting rough stones. She cut with practiced ease, revealing the secret inside, gleaming ivory white segments of fruit, as pale and luminous as moonlight. With the grace of someone handing over a precious heirloom, she passed me the mangosteen on a napkin, her smile lingering just long enough to leave a trace of warmth. Seed very bitter. Not bite, eat, she warned with a smile, making the warning sound as ancient and wise as an old proverb. I took my first nibble of mangosteen. Holy effing Toledo! Bliss. An otherworldly juicy blast of bliss. The taste was a revelation. Lychee, banana, peach, cantaloupe, but more. Something floral, ethereal, delicate, like someone had captured the essence of a garden in full bloom and made it edible. The texture was soft, lush, and seductive. I probably looked stoned, euphoric, maybe deranged. But it was the kind of bliss that comes only once in a lifetime, like losing one's virginity. She was watching me, eyes giving me a thorough once over with a look that said she was considering calling for help. Or maybe it was amusement and something else. You like? She said, her voice dancing with playfulness, as though the entire world's worth of pleasure had just been passed between us in that one moment. I bowed as gracefully as I could, murmuring, Cob Cobcom Crab. like it was some kind of incantation, a prayer of thanks. I tried to hand her some bot notes. She shook her head and gently pushed my hand away, watching me devour that mangosteen, looking at me like I was a junkyard dog that had just discovered pleasure for the first time, was apparently payment enough. Then she asked me, via her phone, if I was a chef. I typed back, not a chef, just obsessed with beautiful things throughout the world. But I do cook. A lot. She nodded thoughtfully but didn't speak. There was a pause between us, a flicker in her gaze that lingered a beat longer than I anticipated. It was almost too much to look at her, such was her beauty. I shyly averted my gaze from hers, though I really didn't want to. As I turned to walk away, I saw her eyes following me, her face still illuminated by that radiant smile. I was still smiling too, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from hers. But damn, I couldn't help it. She was as disarmingly sweet as she was stunningly pretty, and I wasn't ready to leave that moment just yet. I stopped and stepped back to her. I typed I'd return after dinner to pick up a few more if she was still open. She nodded but didn't speak. As I walked into the shabu shabu place next door, I turned to look back and caught her eyes still following me. Her face lit up. I couldn't describe what that was, just that it was something that hadn't been there before. Inside the clatter and steam of the Japanese style hot pot joint was its own kind of music. Shabu shabu translates to swish swish. It just happens when dinner meets a party atmosphere symphonic performance. You pick your raw ingredients from a checklist menu, and when your choices come, drop them into bubbling broth. I'd opted for the mild and hell broth side by side combo, and play conductor with a pair of metal chopsticks. Swish, dip, eat, repeat. Sauces range from subtle to incendiary, so you get to customize each bite like a choose your own adventure ending. It's hands on eating at its finest, an edible meditation. Or maybe just the right kind of distraction when your brain's still back outside thinking about fruit, eyes, and smiles, and the wordless things that sometimes pass between strangers. Dinner was delicious. A shabu shabu place located in my new neighborhood? The area was growing on me fast. After that satisfying munch festival, I returned next door. Through a heroic mixture of bad Thai, me, bad English, her, enthusiastic pantomime, and frantic pointing at phone, fruit, and occasionally each other, Chalermwan and I resumed our mangosteen summit. At one point, I obviously botched some pronunciation so badly that she was doubled over, dripping tears from laughter. Her laugh was infectious. I wondered if I had just asked her if I could have a hot lava massage. After we settled down, she advised me to hide the mangosteens in a bag before returning home, because hotels didn't allow them in rooms. Not for any durian style stench crimes, but because the rinds bleed a vicious inky purple that could stain jet black things purple. Like black magic, she said, and I lost it. Then came the freezer warning. Don't freeze, make crystal mush, she said with a grave little shake of her head, followed by a squished face that somehow managed to be both tragic and adorable. Clearly, this was wisdom earned through personal tragedy. I didn't even know crystal mush was a thing. I studied her then, not just the fruit, not her broken Thai-glish, but her spark. I asked why she was into mangosteen. She leaned in a little, eyes twinkling, and in a quiet, conspiratorial voice said, Make man strong. I laughed and typed, Everything in Asia makes man strong. But I also wondered, was that flirtation or simply age old wisdom being passed along? Taking a deep breath to regain my inner cool, I asked how long the mangosteens would be around. By way of explanation, I let her know I was staying at the Sunreno just down the sidewalk for a couple of weeks. She tapped out her reply. It was the beginning of the season. They'd be available for a while. I reached for a few that, to my untrained eyes, looked like food porn centerfolds. Glossy, plump, indecently perfect. But before I could bag them, she tisked me, gently took my hand, shook her head, and returned them to the pyramid. Out came the blade again. Snap, using the precise flange tapping method she'd used before. She selected four I dismissed as a little too rough, a little too off camera. These good. Eat tonight or morning, she said. I nodded, trusting the fruit whisperer. The next morning, they were gone, devoured with Greek yogurt and granola, each segment an indulgent high and sigh. I cut them open carefully into a thick wad of paper towels, just as she warned. No evidence, just bliss. And something had clicked between us, soft as fruit flesh, but unmistakably real. That day was uneventful, unless you count the 6.5 hours I spent navigating the bureaucratic theme park known as the Thai Government Immigration Bureau. Add a 90-minute commute each way on public transport. Standing, of course, wedged between students, commuters, and a fellow who smelled like showers were for the weak, and you've got yourself a full day field trip into the heart of existential anxiety. The process had all the charm and logic of a DMV office run by Kafka after many shots of vodka. You take a number, which gets you some forms. Hand those over. Get copies of said forms. Then wait for the privilege of being given another number, which entitles you to stand in a different line where someone glances at your forms, stamps a thing or three, and then directs you, wordlessly, to a third line with another number, which empties into a cavernous seating area with no signage, rhyme, or reason. An endless wait on plastic seats, along with hundreds of your favorite non friends as we all watch the red LED number counter seem to move backwards into eternity. The paperwork itself felt like an exercise in creative guessing. Forms that didn't match what was on the website, fields that assumed you had a local Thai phone number, a local address with a landlord who answers the phone, and psychic knowledge of how your passport photo should be cropped. I had 5 copies of everything, which of course meant I was missing the sixth copy no one tells you about until it's your turn. And then came the deeply spiritual 1 hour lunch break, announced not by a chime or bell or even warned about, but by the sudden disappearance of every official in the building as if the rapture had selectively claimed only the bureaucrats. Myself and 1,000 confused foreigners still clutching number slips for different lines were herded outside by security like mildly bewildered livestock, milling around in the humid purgatory of a parking lot, all asking each other the same question in different languages. Is this normal? Yes, it is. I endured that bureaucratic mess for the privilege of staying 30 more days. And I get it. Over the years, so many people have overstayed their welcome and their visa that steps had to be taken to stem the tide of paradise seekers who didn't have a plan. Many of them are still there, likely living in the hills around Pai or purposely lost in the vastness of Bangkok's endless neighborhoods. There was no enlightenment. There was no joy. But there was a moment, around hour 3, when I stopped resisting and fretting and oozed my way into acceptance. That I would die in this line, passport in skeleton hand. My face frozen in a polite grimace was a distinct possibility. But then, a miracle. My number showed up on the red LED scroll with a booth number. I almost had an orgasm. I emerged an hour later, wallet lighter, dehydrated and soul thinned, but triumphant. A fresh stamp in my passport legally permitted me to bask another month in paradise. The ride back was brutal. Dusk found me armed freshly with a new passport stamp and a half baked sense of accomplishment from the bureaucratic slog, I made my way to Chalormwan's fruit store. The day had drained me, but there was something about the pull of her presence, the easy, unhurried rhythm of our exchanges, the twinkle in her eye, and the promise of fresh fruit that kept me moving forward. I was both hungry and thirsty, and fruit has that magical talent to satisfy both at once. Plus, it was about as far removed from the sterile government building I had just spent the day in as I could get. As I walked up, feeling broken, Chalormwan's face broke into a wide smile. But then she paused as she looked me over, her brows furrowing slightly. I looked like I had been through a war zone, face pale, even with a tropical tan, body and mind stiff from the long hours of waiting and the monotony of forms and stamps. She asked me something in Thai, her voice laced with concern. I gave her the rundown of my day via Translate, showed her my new stamp, exaggerating the boredom for comedic effect, and as she laughed, her whole face lit up in that warm, genuine way that made me feel like I was more than just a customer. She placed her hand on mine and said, "It okay. Let go. Let it laugh." "I need to stock up my fridge with fruit, but I'd like you to choose for me," I explained, though I certainly had additional motives for being there in her space. She said something that I didn't understand as her eyes sparkled with amusement. She picked out an assortment of fruits with a skill that was both practical and poetic. A ridiculously juicy pineapple, a candy sweet Sprite melon, ultra creamy fat bananas, tart mountain oranges, a watermelon with rind so taut I thought it might explode into a red splatter that might look like a kill zone if I looked at it wrong, and naturally, more mangosteens. She was more than a fruit vendor. She was an artist at work. She asked if I had a knife. I said yes via the translator. I had a knife in my room, but it was so dull it was as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Chalermon gave me one of those little laughs that was utterly charming, then disappeared with my fruit into the shop. In about a minute she returned with the fruit sliced and bagged, evidence that she had done this 1,000 times. She handed me the big bag of fruit. I could feel the weight of it in my hands, the promise of sweetness within. Then a delightful surprise. Along with the hefty bag was a slip of paper on which she had written her number. I looked at it, then her, and raised my eyebrows in surprise. How wonderfully old school! I stood there gazing at that slip of paper. That gesture was something rare and delicate. It wasn't just a number, it was an invitation, an offering in blue ink, and something about it, the simplicity, the directness, cut through the static in my brain like a razor. She stared into my eyes, challenging me. Challenge accepted. I hadn't felt this kind of pull in a long time. No chase, no pretense, a simple connection. Was there something there beyond mere fascination? Time would tell. With an almost frantic clarity, so as to not let this moment slip me by, I put the bag of fruit aside on the edge of a table and punched her number into WhatsApp, then sent her a quick text with my name and number. The sound of her phone pinging was a perfect confirmation of the spark growing between us. Her smile widened as she looked back at me, clearly pleased, and I could almost feel her relief at the small but significant gesture of exchange. I felt it too. She opened up WhatsApp, found my text, snapped a pic of my bedraggled face to add to my new profile. I looked like a half awake zombie that desperately needed a shower and a shave. We texted back and forth deep into the early morning hours, revealing more about ourselves than either of us had intended. It was one of those late night conversations where filters slip away and the usual guardedness between new acquaintances fades, replaced by a very real desire to know more. We found ourselves sharing things we hadn't planned, but that divulged naturally, as if we'd been talking for years instead of just hours. Each message felt like a piece of a puzzle we were composing together. There were no grand gestures, no overtly probing questions about each other's pasts, simply honest and casual exchanges about each other: food, music, art, nature, the little quirks of each other's lives, tidbits you'd share over coffee. It was honest in that breathable, comfortable way that comes after the first walls come down, leaving the kind of conversation that feels more like a release than an effort. As night crept towards morning, I felt the pull of sleep weighing on me, but I didn't want to end the conversation. Neither did she. We wrapped things up with a video chat, the glow of our screens illuminating the wee hours before dawn. It was intimate. Just the sound of her voice through the tinny phone speaker had the quiet power to make everything else feel unimportant. "We meet at dim sum, yes?" she asked, her smile lingering as she moved a stray strand of hair from her face. "I no work until 3." I agreed without hesitation. The thought of seeing her again and getting to spend time with her in only a few hours, continuing up that cresting wave which seemed so effortless, yet unexpectedly profound, felt not only right, but vital. And then she did something that made my heart flutter for a microsecond. With that playful smile of hers, she leaned into the phone, closer to her camera, and asked, "What we do after breakfast?" The question hung there for a moment, heavy with potential, and I found myself searching her eyes for something more. Was it flirtation? We were already there. Was it curiosity to know more? To see how I would react to a loaded question? A playful spark testing the waters? Whatever it was, it made my heart race, and for the first time in a long time, I felt that flutter of possibility. The entirety of our union felt effortless, as if we were stepping into something that was already meant to be. There was no pretense, no weighing of expectations or false starts. It just was. And that's the way it's supposed to be when an unexpected connection lands in your life. We had a date, and it wasn't the kind of date shaped by walled rituals and tentative expectations. There weren't any heavy build-ups or awkward pauses. It was two people connecting in the simplest, the most natural way. Dim sum with Chalermwan was absolutely delightful. Our morning was filled with charming surprises and laughter. She was impressed with my chopstick skill. I've been using chopsticks since I was a little boy and had enough experience to be a decent contender in any contest. Her expertise, however, was in the obscure, in the dim sum secrets that menus dared not whisper to anyone outside the sanctum sanctorum. She ordered dishes that weren't listed, the cooks whipping them up just for us. One standout blew my mind and has kept me awake some nights ever since trying, and failing, to find the name of it. It was a whipped scallop and chive moose ball, dipped in cornstarch and rice flour, then fried to golden perfection. Ethereal is the only word I can think of. An amazing thin layer of crunch, followed by creamy molten mousse of scallop and chive yumminess. I wondered if there was some kind of divine culinary intervention throwing us together. Over breakfast, Chalermwan confessed that she had watched me the day before, sitting and eating alone, confidently navigating the sea of dim sum as if I were born with chopsticks in my hand. She said she wondered why I was on my own, and then teased me about how much I ordered. There was something about the way she spoke and the way her warmth radiated out of her when she brazenly locked her eyes with mine, like she saw me in a way no one else had, with curiosity and something a little mischievous. I asked her more about herself. When she told me she had family in San Francisco and wanted so badly to go there but could never afford the trip, I felt a sudden but unmistakable pang of empathy. I felt her longing. It was sad, how her voice had a quiet, powerful ache as she talked about that dream, a desire that wasn't only about a trip, but about something deeper, about wanting to escape, to see the world beyond what she knew. I'd never felt such a deep longing pouring out from anyone before. She wasn't just dreaming about San Francisco, she was dreaming about possibilities, freedom, and the hope of visiting someplace so far out of reach. We shared stories of our lives, my California adventures, and that I had spent over 30 years not only living in, but exploring every inch of San Francisco. I talked about the rhythm of the fog rolling through the Golden Gate and how it slowly flooded the park as it flowed eastward towards the height, how the sonorous horns bellowed from vessels on the bay, invisible through the surface bonded clouds, as the clang and dings of cable cars pierced those mists, the way the city changed from dawn to dusk, and the way every street had its own character. Her eyes lit up as I described the broad sky over the Richmond district at sunset, how the ocean breeze smelled like cool salt and faraway ports, and how you could walk down Columbus Avenue, hear 100 different languages, but somehow it still felt like home. Her dreams of seeing the Golden Gate Bridge, Ocean Beach, Fisherman's Wharf, and Chinatown were vivid, so full of life and detail that I could see them through her eyes. She spoke of the bustling streets of my city, the food, the culture, the feeling of standing in the middle of San Francisco, a city that had been a symbol of freedom and reinvention for so many people. And she mentioned the one place that surprised me. It felt more like a metaphor for everything she longed for, the view from the top of Twin Peaks. That the one, she said with quiet certainty. That where I go when I see San Francisco. I want to stand on top, see all of it, like I make it. I wanted to tell her of the many times that my friends and I used to go up there at night, getting high and gaze down upon the blazing yellow spear of Market Street glowing bright at night from the Castro to the Ferry Building. But I thought better of it. No need to bring up a past that had very little to do with who I was now. Yet. We switched gears as I told her about my adventure, walking through the Klong Canal neighborhood behind the hotel. She smiled and told me she lived there. We made a deal. She'd show me around her neighborhood, the canal streets I'd become fascinated with, and I'd tell her about San Francisco in more minute detail so she could live its fog, its hills, its food, its sights, smells, and sounds in her imagination. It would be a fair trade, culture to culture, and frankly, to spend more time with her, any exchange would be welcomed. The morning was beautiful with clear skies. It was the kind of day that promises good things ahead. It was still early enough that the heat hadn't started to creep upwards as it relentlessly does in Thailand. We walked through winding lanes and alleys, some so tall and narrow I could feel them sucking in their gut to let us pass. The homes were small, tidy, well lived in. Most had colorful gardens spilling out from every nook and cranny, hanging planters along eaves and lush micro gardens choked full of edible plants. It was so lush that I half expected the vegetables and herbs to jump into a salad bowl. Chularmwan guided me through it all, pointing out little touches of personality of each home, explaining what made the area so special. All the while we exchanged brief touches, an arm gently held while a finger coyly pointed at something to showcase an example of something culturally important, or eyes locked on each other for more than a passing glance as questions bounced back and forth. We strolled until she stopped at a little bridge, gesturing to a cozy, picturesque, garden covered house. This where I live. Would you see inside? She asked as she tugged at my hand, the invitation hanging like an unspoken prayer come true. There was no way I would, or could, say no. Invitations like that aren't about hospitality. They're about trust, about being offered a keyhole view into someone's life, unfiltered and uncurated. You don't turn down that kind of generosity. Not if you have even an ounce of sense, or any reverence for the beauty of being granted admission to something so sacred. My heart was thudding, loud enough that I knew she could hear it echoing in the small space between us. It pulsed in my neck, in my temples and wrists, like my whole body had switched to broadcast mode. Was she doing the same? Or was I the only one caught in this electric quiet? We stood there for a long breath, side by side in the hush of her home, surrounded by the elegant dignity of her personal space. There was something unspoken in the way she had opened the door not just to her home, but to the personal corners of her life. No fanfare, no grand gesture, just quiet permission. And in that silence, I slowly turned in place, taking it all in. The subtlety of lived in comfort as morning light filtered through small louvered windows, and the unmistakable sense that every object had been touched by time and placed with care. There wasn't a single modern electronic in sight. No TV, no iPad, no computer, no phone, no cords. Nothing but home. It was beautiful. In the far corner of the main room, which served as sitting, reading, open space, nestled against a teak wall tinged with the rich patina of age, stood a small shrine. An elegant, time worn stone Buddha seated in serenity on a carved teak table, surrounded by offerings. It was clear this wasn't for display, it was devotion, an ongoing, living relationship. I shyly asked if we could take a moment together to pay homage to the triple gem. I had never led any of the incantations which I had come to love at my monastery, but I felt a strong urge to do and there. It was as if Buddha was asking me to step into a role I had walked away from, if only to feel that reverence again. She turned to me with a smile that was surprised yet gentle, quiet, warm, and full of understanding. She whispered, "Yes." She moved gracefully, retrieving three joss sticks from a tall white and blue porcelain jar. The smoke began to rise in slow, swirling threads, curling like dream prayers toward the ceiling. We knelt together on her deep Parisian rug, the hush around us, its own form of music. I opened my phone to the Pali verses I had come to know and cherish, and in that small moment, knees on her floor, palms together, heart gently thudding in my chest, I led the incantation. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhasa. Iti piso bhaghava aram sambuho. Viha karana sampano sugato lokavidu anutaro purisa dhamma surati satu deva manusanam buddho bhagavati suakato bhagavata dhammo sanhito akuliko e pasiko apunahiko pakatam vidyatabo vinhuti supati pano bhagavato savkava sangho ujupati pano bhagavato savaka sangho nayoa patipano bhagavato sauka sangho sumichi patunano bhagavato sauka sangho yadidam katuri purisa yugani atira purisa Pugalu, Esa Bhagavato, Savaka, Sango, Ao Neo, Pua Neo, Daki Neo, Analik Kar Anio, Anatararum, Punuketam, Loka Suti. The cadence of the words, like the verses of a favorite song, flowed lightly through the room, mingling with the sweet fragrance of incense. Our vows of supplication to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha were real and so personal that it felt a shiver run through me. The walls seemed to exhale around us as the ancient sacred symbols danced with the motes in the sunlight. Outside, I could hear the soft hum of the neighborhood, the splash of something in the canal, neighbors chatting, a rooster crying out a second morning. But inside, time stood still. I could feel her beside me, not just physically, but in that deeper way when two people are fully present in a shared moment. I didn't dare look over. I didn't want to break the spell. We had stepped into something older than both of us, something tender and true, stitched from reverence, shared silence, and serenity. We sat there, knees still on the rug, hands now resting lightly in our laps. The stillness that followed wasn't empty, it was full, a sacred kind of full, and in that fullness something had shifted, something both beautiful and quietly thrilling. She leaned into, then onto me. Only people I like use name Charlie. I want you that. Chalarmwan whispered into my ear, her voice barely louder than the breath that carried it. A shiver went through me, not from the air, which was warm and still, but from the closeness, the care and intention enveloped in her words. Too, you say name funny, she added with a soft giggle, the kind that made it impossible not to laugh in return. I know I do. I'll get it. But you'll need to give my tongue a lot of practice and time to wrap around. Chal Wan, I said slowly, deliberately, carefully. I turned to find her searching eyes, wide, glimmering, half amused, half serious, and in that look was something unmistakable. It wasn't just affection, it was exploration. It was the tipping point between something casual and something that could no longer pretend not to be. That look must have been dancing in my eyes too, because we stared into each other for a very long time. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next, but I knew what I wanted. And for once, the wanting didn't come with panic or second guessing, just a steady, quiet clarity. We continued wandering deeper into the web of alleyways, each turn revealing another quiet corner of her world. In exchange, I painted San Francisco into her imagination as vividly as I could, describing the moody fog ghosting through the hills, the clang, din, ding, and rattle of cable cars echoing off Victorian facades, the neighborhoods, the smell of marine brine, the aroma of sourdough, the bars and clubs of every flavor and hue, the museums, the parks, the bookstores where the beatmasters read and wrote, and restaurants that had invented dishes the world now loves. Her eyes lit up, drinking it all in like a bedtime story she'd been waiting her whole life to hear. Our phones, loyal but often hilariously inept interpreters, became bridges between our vocabularies. Mistranslations led to eruptions of laughter. We fumbled through phrases, turning communication into play, treating words like treasures. I taught her how to say mission burrito, and she tried to get me to say gra prau mu kai dao, holy basil pork stir fry with fried egg, without sounding like a drunk tourist. I failed spectacularly. She erupted in shoulder shaking bout of laughter. When I told her that Arroy, delicious, was my favorite go to Thai word, she laughed so hard she had to lean on the wall to keep upright. That fit you, she managed between breaths, wiping tears from her eyes. her smile softening as her gaze again lingered on me a little longer than before. Later, back at her home, the universe blissfully slowed things down. We sat cross legged on thick outdoor pillows in her shaded garden, green tea steaming gently in our cups. Around us, dozens of hanging and potted aromatic herbs, flowers, and succulents soaked up the rising heat and humidity, the air fragrant with lemongrass and basil, frangipani, roses, and a hint of sweet banana. Hundreds of bees buzzed lazily, unhurried. They knew there was plenty of pollen for all. Birds sang to each other from the rooftops and hiding spots as the neighborhood hummed with the thick warmth of midday. Time stretched. The kind of quietude you don't notice until you're wrapped in it settled into place around us. Light, kind, alive. Chalermon had a busy afternoon ahead. As we parted ways, she described the quickest route out of the canals back to the Sunreno. As I walked away from fantasy, I kept glancing back, burning the route, the memory of her and our morning into my mind, to capture those moments. The warmth in her smile, the fun Thai lilt of her voice lingering in my ears. I saw her eyes and smile following me, and though I couldn't hear her thoughts, the unspoken words between us pealed out loud and clear. Emotionally charged, feeling alive, I made my way back through the labyrinth of alleys, now looking at this odd neighborhood with new eyes, imagining the lives led inside each home. The floating lightness of the day, the heat in the air, and the weight of emotional connection settled into me. There was a tenderness in the way the sun peeked into the alleys, casting shadows across the walls and streets, and on the quiet ache in my chest, borne on the wings of hope, as the busy world continued its constant march forward without mercy. There was a flicker of something else, unspoken yet, but palpable, like the feeling before a rising storm when everything holds its breath. A stillness that promised, despite the world's chaos, that something was encroaching on the horizon. During our meanderings, I had asked Chalermwan for a recommendation, a local Thai restaurant or bar where only locals go. If restaurant, it must also make good cocktails. Hopefully, somewhere in the neighborhood, I described my futile quest the night before and how I had, out of necessity, ended up trolling the glitzy, overtly tourist priced paradise of Asiatique for a cocktail, which she found hysterically amusing. We not drink there, she admonished. She lit up again, visibly excited to share her world, and told me about a place nearby that she said was excellent. However, there was a catch. It was owned by her cousin. So, you're saying you're biased? I teased, explaining the concept through the translator. She laughed, admitting yes, but insisted it was worth the visit. I joked that she'd make a killing as a marketer with that kind of pitch, but she remained adamant that the restaurant was genuinely popular with locals, especially chefs. She had already learned how to pique my interest. Clever girl. When she said that, my interest soared. After all, where do chefs eat? The coolest places with staff that know their craft. I've learned that there's no better recommendation than that of a local who knows where chefs eat. Chalermon was becoming more intriguing by the second. The afternoon passed quietly, though my slow exploration of the shops and service businesses on my return route to the Sunreno turned out to be a smart move. I knew where to find the essentials, which is always a good thing when you plant yourself in a new neighborhood. I spent the rest of that afternoon meditating, then writing, the steady rhythm of the pen moving effortlessly across the paper providing sanctuary from the blazing hot and humid world outside, then taking a well earned nap. It was the kind of nap where you wake up feeling disoriented, but in that pleasant, am I high feeling, like you've been wandering in another dimension. On my way to dinner, I stopped by Charlie's fruit stand to offer a hand. She and her workers were busy selling fruit by the bagful. I strolled up and asked if she wanted help. I wasn't asking for a job per se, but truly wanted to be of use to her. She shoved me away, playfully, saying, "You be in way." As I started to turn away, she grabbed my wrist and pulled me in, and planting a lingering, gentle kiss on my cheek. Then, with a grin and a theatrical shove, she pushed me out the door. I turned in the doorway. Our eyes locked. I winked. She smiled. I bowed. She spun, then turned her head, blew an air kiss, and with one last flick of her hand, shooed me down the sidewalk. I heard laughter. As I turned back, but stupidly kept walking, I caught one of her workers giggling beside her just before I stumbled straight into a light post. I didn't care. Walking down the sidewalk, my cheeks burned brightly from that kiss as a sweet warmth spread through me. The world had turned softer as my core temperature rose. Bangkok was becoming more than inviting. Her curtains were being pulled back, and I was eager to catch the show. I prayed my world was about to change in a profound way, not because it needed to, but because I wanted it to. What I had been privy to so far was way beyond command. The evening air was cooler, but that shift did little to ease the heat lingering on my cheek. As I strolled, I wondered if I was worthy of affection. It was vulnerable but necessary, musings that hit like fleeting clouds. My monkey was having a field day. It was something that felt both foreign and familiar. In that moment, I didn't need an answer, but the question was important, and the feeling of it, that loving magnetic pull developing between us, left me in a quandary and broached the question: am I worthy? That bounced around in my head like a super ball on cocaine. Vanita Bangkok was a tasteful, interpretive cross between Lana and semi Victorian architecture on Chan Road, just a short walk beyond the maze of canals and alleys I'd gotten lost in. The exterior was white with clean, elegant lines that gave it a mash-up Thai European vibe. The conservatory and exterior Edison bulb strings had the place dressed up with eye candy, but it was inside where the magic really unfolded. Victorian details were everywhere: high beamed white ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and tall, narrow windows draped in sheer gauze softened the edges. Dark wood furniture anchored the space, complemented by framed photos tucked into every nook and wall panel. Upholstered chairs and benches bore a mix of sophisticated fabrics, while the floors told their own story: age deep red wide plank teak in the dining rooms, and a crisp black, white, and gray diamond tile in the adjoining bar and snack cafe. White served as a quiet backdrop, letting every other design element shine. Bursts of color added depth and charm. Royal and teal blues broke up the visual field, while brass sconces cast warm pools of light along walls and walkways. Tasteful Parisian rugs grounded the space with patterns and softness. The result was a place that felt both grand and intimate, spacious and bright, yet layered with warmth and character. It was unlike anything I'd seen in Thailand, but felt deeply familiar. Vanita may have been local, but it showcased the owner's taste and obvious experience abroad. My bartender, I'll call him Jax, was a funny, gregarious fellow and was almost fluent in English. I asked for a martini. He was a pro. First, he asked what gin I preferred, how much dry vermouth I wanted, and whether I preferred olives or a twist. He asked all the right questions. I didn't bother with my martini lecture. With the precision of someone who knows their craft, he proceeded to stir up a perfect martini. I had Thai spicy yellow curry soup with pickled bamboo and sea bass, with incredibly fluffy jasmine rice. Jax asked how I'd found his restaurant. I told him about the beautiful woman who had befriended me, Chalorn. She recommended the place, saying her cousin owned it. He smiled knowingly, then said, "Aha! So you're the Ferenc she don't stop texting about," giving me a lingering once over and a wink while polishing wine stems. I raised an eyebrow. "You must be her cousin. I didn't know I'd made that much of an impression that she'd be texting everyone." "Oh, you have," he continued, still polishing. I noticed him paying attention to me in an investigatory manner. "She talks about you like you're already part of the family. She calls you keeper, gentleman, and smart. She likes you." I chuckled, a little taken aback. Well, she's got the gentleman part wrong, I teased. She's a bit ahead of herself, don't you think? We only just met. We barely know each other. So far. Jax replied with a shrug. Charlie doesn't waste time with stupid boys. They all after her. She says no every time. He finished his polishing with a flourish, clearly pleased with his work as he held a glittering stem up to the light. You are different in her eye. Something about you she likes a lot, even though you are a white guy. He laughed. I felt my cheeks warm, though I tried to play it cool, taking a long drag off my martini. I'll try not to disappoint. She's really special. Jax only smiled, his eyes glittering with amusement. It was a strange thing, hearing those words. I felt the weight of that conversation like an x ray blanket. Confidence settled into me the way an unexpected compliment hits you pure. And yet, the feeling that the evening was settling something into motion felt rooted. Whatever it was, I was already caught up in it and all too happy to take the ride. Um, Not to pry into territory that might be sensitive, but Jax. She's beautiful, kind, intuitive, smart in more ways than just her mind, and she's so friendly. I thought she would just wanted to sell me more fruit when we've moved way beyond that. I took the last sip of my martini. She doesn't have a dangerously jealous husband in jail somewhere. I knew the answer, but thought I'd double check, just in case. Jax let out a hearty laugh, clearly enjoying my curiosity. No one's good enough for her, he said, his voice full of affection for Charlie. She's independent. The last boyfriend, we didn't like him. He got tossed into the canal a couple of years ago. He was cheating on her with her BFF. She's a jujitsu black belt, if you don't know. Flipped him right over the rail. I blinked, trying to process what he'd just said. He smiled and shook his head, reliving the memory, chuckling to himself as he turned to make drinks for another customer, leaving me sitting there, empty martini on the bar, a little stunned. Note to self: do not piss off Charleroi. I texted Charlie, thanking her for the great recommendation and saying I was very fond of her cousin. I almost jokingly added that I couldn't swim. I can, but decided better of it. A moment later, Jack slid a second martini my way with a wink. On the house, he said with a grin. Then, sticking out his fist for a bump, he added, Before you go, unlock your phone for me. It seemed to be a Thai thing that states, I'm now in your world and you're in mine thing. So I unlocked and handed him my phone. He typed his digits in, handed it back with a grin, and gave me a fake stern warning look. Don't make me have to come get you out of trouble. But just in case, there's my number. I raised an eyebrow, then laughed. Wouldn't dream of it. Then again, Thailand has so many ways to get into trouble. It's always good to have an ace up your sleeve. Jax returned to his work, leaving me with a wondrous sense of having made a genuine friend, or a protective ally, possibly both. That night we got more than a little bit tipsy. Jax, off the clock and already 2 martinis deep, leaned in with a troublemaking grin. So, I text Charlie to come by and hang out. She's closing up. Right about now, he said, looking at his phone, clearly enjoying the idea of playing matchmaker. I, on my third martini, waved him off with a laugh. Are you nuts? I'm buzzed. The last thing I need is your cousin walking in here sober while I'm contemplating a fourth martini. She'd take me back to her place just to flip me into the water. We both burst out laughing, the sound of it filling the bar as the night wound down. He slapped me on the shoulder. Yeah, good call, bro, he said with a grin. It felt like the beginning of something, though I wasn't quite sure what. But I had the distinct feeling that if I ever did find myself on the wrong side of Charlermoine's good graces, I could count on her cousin to have my back, or at least make sure I didn't drown in a back alley clong. I awoke just as the sky was showing off its blush, and admittedly I was a little rough. My head was a battlefield, and my body was protesting the mere idea of being anywhere near a gym. But I dragged myself there anyway, determined to sweat out the previous evening's indulgences. After an hour of pouring martinis out of every pore on a bike and treadmill and silently swearing through the sweat that I should have stopped at 2, my phone pinged. It was Charleroi. Her message read, "My cousin and love you. Now we marry so you family." It was followed by a winking, crazy faced emoji. I grinned, my hangover momentarily forgotten, and replied, "Well, I suppose it's not every day a man gets a marriage proposal that's so efficient and perfunctory." "Okay," followed by a kiss emoji. It took her a while to translate, but she followed up with LOL. We met for dim sum again, our now sacred ritual of steamer baskets and not so subtle glances. She suggested a walk through Lumpini Park, Bangkok's Green Heart, and just like that, the day unfolded with the quiet ease of something meant to be. Lumpini had already made my short list, but coming from her, it became something more. A shared plan, not just a personal wish. By now, I trusted her completely. She'd already proven herself a guide of the highest order, equal parts instinct and elegance, with a knack for knowing exactly what I didn't know I needed. "I'm in your capable hands," I told her. "Order whatever you like. Don't worry, I'm not squeamish about eating anything." She grinned a bit evilly, I thought. I could tell she was going to test the waters. I loved it, and was excited for whatever came to the table. I listened carefully as she launched into a rapid fire conversation with the server. Her Thai flowed while I, a mere spectator, nodded and smiled, looking like I understood more than I actually did, or anything at all for that matter. I think I caught har and my at some point, but that was all. The server nodded, rapidly jotting notes on the back of her order sheet. She had that rapt attention of someone cramming for a final exam. 30 minutes later, she ordered a lot. A parade of dishes arrived, each one more daring than the last. Tripe in fermented bean sauce, beef tendon bao, ox heart shiu mai, skewered chicken livers and skin, ox kidneys with fermented cabbage wrapped in sticky rice, fish balls cooked over open coals, and those mysterious scallop mousse magic bombs that were now etched in my sense memory. There were a few recognizable crowd pleasers for good measure, though they seemed a little out of place amidst the more adventurous offerings. Sitting there, surrounded by dishes that were both foreign and familiar, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Being in Bangkok, with a woman who was turning my world upside down in the most delightful way, who had a palate and stomach that matched mine, I would face her challenge and was looking forward to it all. I was hooked. On the food, on her, on the sleepy corner of Bangkok, on all of it. If I could only get the aroma of juniper from all that gin out of my nose, I would have been at a level of sabai I have rarely known. The tripe had been slow braised, then wok fried with fermented bean paste, rich and punchy with just the right chew and squeak. Tendon bao? Fantastic! The hearts were grilled, then rubbed with spiced charcoal before being shoveled into shiomai, earthy, smoky, and tender. The chicken livers were yakitori style, alternating with crispy skin and basted in a simmering, rich chicken stock glaze. Freaking delicious! The fish balls? Boiled in stock, then roasted over hardwood with a miso paste brushed down until silky. This wasn't dim sum. This was art. She asked if I wanted to try brain. I tapped out. Not at the thought of brain. I've had it before and it was delicious, but because I was running out of room and was craving their crispy chive pancakes, I'd had them on my first morning and my mouth did backflips, which were nothing short of perfection. Paper thin, fried to a golden crisp that burst apart like edible glass with each bite. Chef Yip's crew was clearly serious about their craft. I grinned, trying to determine her motivation. So, were you trying to freak me out with all the guts and gore? Charleroi, with her mischievous playfulness and top gear, gave me a sly smile. Seeing if adventure you are. I don't like brain, but see if you go that way. I raised an eyebrow, understanding that she was discovering me. Time to turn the table around. So, Charlie, do you like sushi? Sashimi? That was the first time I called her by her short name. She caught it like an all-star shagging a deep fly ball at the top of the wall. She smiled as her eyes lit up. Then she squeaked with excitement. I love sushi, but no family go with me. They say no taste. Oh, this was going to be delicious. I chuckled, already plotting revenge with the glee of a villain in a fish market. I could almost hear her gasps of incredulous awe as I unveiled my world of sushi. Fermented roe sacks, marinated raw quail eggs atop salmon roe, briny sea urchin with crab fat, buttery monkfish liver, and, if the gods of the questionable were smiling, some oozy, aged delicacy that looked like it had crawled out of the ocean and given up mid evolution. It wasn't going to be dinner, it was going to be theater. All I had to do was find the stage. But for now, we continued to eat, laughing and sharing our stories one dish at a time. The food, while wonderful, was only the backdrop to the real adventure unfolding. It was time. Time to show how I was floating, how everything felt suspended, percolating in that thrilling space between us. As we rose, I reached for her. My hand found hers as I gently pulled her into me. I stared into her eyes as the world around us faded. I kissed her, not on the cheek. It was gentle, but it was everything. Subtle, like a whisper, but charged with something that neither of us needed to articulate. Time stood still, holding us suspended in that instance. We never broke eye contact. My eyes held 1,000 whirling emotions, too many to pin down, while hers smiled back softly, approving, knowing. And in that exchange, I felt that marvelous flash when you know that the most powerful moments don't need words. After breakfast and our hurried exit to avoid remonstration, we made our way down the sidewalk to the bus stop. Charleroi took my hand and playfully began to skip by my side. It was a silly, beautiful gesture of easy playfulness, one that caught me slightly off guard. Public affection isn't something you see often in Thailand, especially with older generations around. And though it was welcome, I hadn't expected it. But something about that hand in hand moment, everything shifted. I slowed my pace, glanced at her, and for another second within a few minutes, the world blurred around us. Her sheer natural beauty shocked me again. She wasn't just beautiful, she was mesmerizing, a gathering of grace and warmth. I dissolved in the simplicity of her touch and the sincerity of her gaze. We didn't need words to express what was happening between us. The quiet smiles we exchanged, the way we gazed into each other for longer than usual, it shouted volumes with a quiet whisper. We hopped on the belching, funky, faded red #1 bus. That bus was so decrepit that it rode at an unnatural angle and plied the road with open doors and had a personality that could almost talk. I nicknamed him Mater. A mile up the road, we hopped off. I relished the freedom of those open door buses. I was already grinning, waiting for the next part of our adventure. We rode up the escalator at Savan Taksin BTS station. As we lit upon the station platform, she tugged me toward the ticket booth, but I had other plans. I tugged her back and made a beeline for the automated machine, touching the screen to flip it to English, reading the instructions, then punching in the details for our stop. Sala Danang. She watched me as I slid the exact coins into the slot and grabbed our tokens. She observed my self reliant handiwork, shot me a grin, and snatched her token out of my hand. I could have do that, but you smart, she teased, skipping ahead. Her laughter, the sound of a melody I wanted to replay over and over. The train was jam packed when the doors slid open, but we squeezed in just before the doors slid shut behind us. She turned to face me and leaned into my chest, wrapping her arms around me. I gladly reciprocated. It didn't matter that there were people crammed in all around us. At that moment, there was only the gentle sway of the train, the feel of her warm breath piercing my shirt, her scent flooding my senses. Though passengers exited at each stop, gritting space around us, we stayed just like that. It felt natural. It felt wonderful. I could feel something flicker in me, something I thought I'd lost forever. The kind of love that's beautiful and terrifying all at once, that makes you hold on and never let go. I felt it before and knew that feeling all too well. But sometimes those brutal tsunami waves don't let you surf. They just grind you up and spit you out. I prayed that that wouldn't happen again. We held hands as we exited the station closest to the park entrance. Though I'd never do that casually, this wasn't casual for either of us. But it was all so young, so fresh. I asked myself how could this be more than rampaging hormones and the desire for something new? Was that even possible? Directly in front of the exit was an optometrist glasses shop when an idea hit me. I'd been meaning to get new prescription readers for a while. In the US, even with insurance, they were ridiculously overpriced for cheap frames and plastic lenses and took a week to get. You want good frames and glass in the US? Better take out a loan. That's how pathetic the healthcare industry has become back home. I turned to Chalermon and asked if she'd mind stopping in with me. I made it clear it could wait, but she said, Mimi Payana. No problem, showing me the translation on her phone. We stepped inside the well appointed optometrist shop to see if the rumors were true. Any kind of healthcare in Thailand? Professional, reliable, affordable, and fast. 30 minutes later, after a thorough eye exam from an optometrist who'd gotten his degree from SUNY College of Optometry in New York, according to the diploma on the wall, and after choosing a pair of really nice frames, I was told my glasses would be ready in 20 minutes. Wait, what? Did I hear that correctly? Hand ground corrective real glass lenses in under an hour? Well, I'll be damned. We were headed across the way to Lumpini Park, so I told them we'd be back in a couple of hours. To this day, it's the best $48 I've ever spent. Lumpini Park is a sprawling green reprieve in the middle of Bangkok's consistent chaos. 142 acres of green calm surrounded by a riot of glass and steel ambition. It has everything a proper city central park should offer. Towering deciduous and evergreen trees that look like they've been grandfathered in from some dignified era. Larger than life statues depicting heroes of uncertain political or military provenance. Manicured lawns that invite you to walk on them. Playgrounds where children practice their gleeful dominance and mischievous games. Fountains, tennis courts, and a man made lake so precise it practically begs you to pull out brushes and paint the damned thing. There were rowboats and fiberglass pedal swans to rent, if your idea of romance comes with a side of cardio. Benches dotted the paths and lakeside like quiet invitations to stop pretending you were there for exercise. There's a public pool, a sports complex, and because no utopia is complete without paradox, a view of the city's multi-hued and shaped skyline pressed in from every side. The walls of bespoke crushing deadlines. By late morning, the sun had burned off any pretense of comfort. The air had begun to thicken into something tactile, the tropical air you can wear. The various park entrances were gated with tall, ornate wrought iron fences, tipped with gilt, the kind that makes a casual stroll feel vaguely ceremonial. We entered, stepping onto a broad promenade which led us into the park's interior. We reached the path that circled the lake, a paved loop shared by joggers, cyclists, rollerbladers, confused tourists walking while pondering over a phone map, and the two of us. Those stately old trees arched overhead, blotted out some of the sun's merciless beams, granting patches of shade that gave comfort like a shaded chaise on a hot beach. Charlemont reached for my hand again as we began leisurely walking along the path. The lake beside us glinted like a mirror in the sun. I led her over to a shaded bench by the water, the kind of spot where retirees come to feed pigeons, to reflect on life choices and those they've lost. Once seated, I turned to her with the cautious diplomacy and asked, "Isn't public affection frowned upon here?" I tapped that into my phone, posing a variety of angles of the question. Charlie read my phone, then met my gaze with a smoldering intensity, holding it just long enough to make me squirm. Then, without a word, she started rapid typing into her phone, because nothing says modern intimacy like typing your deepest truths and desires into a silicon, metal, and glass computer. She showed me her screen. I don't care. Her thumbs flew on her phone keypad as she laid out her argument. The old ways weren't for her. She was her own person and would do as she pleased, followed by a verbal, "You please me." Before I could craft a thoughtful response, she stood up. I followed suit, assuming the conversation was over. Instead, she turned into me, placed both hands on my chest, and gently pushed me back down onto the bench. Then she straddled my lap and wrapped her arms around me. I had roughly a second to process this new development before she looked into my eyes again and said in her adorable Taiglish, "I never thought I like Farang, but you different. I like a lot." And just like that, we kissed. It was a smoldering, slow, love filled kiss so deliberate that intention couldn't be mistaken, even by me. It wasn't so much an explosive lust launch, more a thoughtful ignition. It was a kiss that didn't ask for permission from the culture or the park, the pigeons or the joggers pretending not to notice us. Sometimes you just have to toss tradition out the window and let the moment rewrite the rules. We absorbed pure emotional connection from each other through that kiss. After catching our breath, smiling at each other in mutual appreciation, and staring into our abyss, one where we were both longing to dive into, we rose and strolled hand in hand, not caring about anything else except each other. We came upon an attractive arched bridge that spanned two sections of the lake. A handful of elderly locals were tossing pellets into the water, their movements slow and deliberate, like they'd been doing this for decades, maybe longer. The lake's surface boiled. Fat carp, catfish, and tilapia surged up from the depths, their backs breaking the surface in a competitive scramble for the food. There was no delicate nibbling. The fish were massive. They moved through the water like aquatic wrecking balls, their bodies bloated from easy handouts, looking like stuffed caricatures of themselves. It was a tumultuous mess. The surface surged with wriggling bodies, fins and tails slapping, mouths opening and closing in an unholy chorus of fish gluttony. The whole scene had a primal absurdity to it. We watched the aquatic madness unfold. Charleroi laughed, shaking her head at the spectacle, and I couldn't help but think, this is the kind of place I could get used to as I slipped towards dotage. A glimpse of the old, odd, unstoppable rhythm of life was very comfortable. The lake was quite large, but I couldn't shake the thought, where the hell do all those fish go when no one's feeding them? Their sheer numbers seemed to outstrip the lake's capacity to house them, at least to my eyes. I mean, it couldn't be that deep, could it? We continued on our way, walking slowly, my arm over her shoulder, hers around my waist as if we had been together for years. Around the far side of the water, we each pointed out points of fascination and laughed at the squirrel wars as they chased each other around, up and down trees. We came upon a classic white gazebo perched on a small rise, thrusting out into the lake like a beacon for romance and making choices. At the entrance, a bold red sign caught my eye. Warning: Water Monitor Lizards. The list of disclaimers for Varanus Salvator was impressive. A. They're fast. B. They're aggressive. C. The park is not liable if you get too close and end up as a snack. Translation: Don't be stupid. I chuckled at the absurdity because where I'm from, dangerous wild animals don't roam freely around public parks in the middle of a city, with a sign shrugging it off like it's both an inconvenience and an attraction. But then Chalermwan, with the quiet seriousness, pressed her finger to my lips. Shh. She pulled me gently over to the railing on the far inside curve of the gazebo, her expression unreadable, then pointed down. There, not 10 feet away, was a beast. A water monitor. It was easily 7 feet long, its keeled, scaly body gleaming in the sunlight like an ancient creature out of a paleontology textbook. Its long blue forked tongue flicked in and out, tasting the air, assessing us with the kind of cold calculation reserved by those that have been around for millions of years. I swear I could hear the Jurassic Park theme music drafting from somewhere else in the park. A chill ran up my spine and caught myself instinctively taking a half step back, pulling Charlie with me. The thing looked like it could rip through a human with all the effort it takes to draw a breath. I glanced at Chalermwan. She met my gaze, and we both burst into nervous giggles. It wasn't that light-hearted kind of laugh that means, this is funny, if not a little bit creepy. No, it was more nervous, well, hell, what now? There be monsters here kind of laugh. The kind that happens when you realize you're suddenly not the top of the food chain anymore and imminent danger is close by. We held each other's hands tighter, as though that might somehow make the lizard rethink its lunch plans. I'm sure it only sparked, ooh, look, a twofer, lust in that lizard brain. Luckily, the water monitor was down there, and we were up here in the relative safety of the enclosed gazebo. Why would a large, fast, aggressive predator be allowed to wander freely around a public park? Thailand, in its infinite wonderful weirdness, had struck again. Then Chalermwan, who had been glancing about, pointed off to the right. There, beneath a low overhanging branch about 30 feet away, another monitor was lounging. Smaller, not by much, but still intimidating. It locked eyes on us as if to say, I'm not hungry yet, but you're looking pretty tasty. I scanned the area for possible defensive weapons, anything that could fend off a rampaging lizard. A thick branch on the ground? A stray rake left by park crew? Maybe a small child that had been left behind, preferably one that could run a little slower than us. A trash can full of leftovers to toss as a distraction. I was grasping at straws, but my flip flops were hardly up to the task of outrunning any creature with a pulse, much less a cold blooded speed demon. Charlie was in much better shape with her running shoes. I'm an honorable fellow, and like any chivalrous guy, should things go sideways, I'd be the one to get mauled by those Godzillas. Sure, I'd earn a scar or two and some nurse's sympathy to go with my gallantry, though the idea of spending the rest of my life with a prosthetic limb was not all that enticing. Still in the gazebo, I pulled out my phone and researched the creature. Fun fact: water monitors can sprint up to 28 miles an hour in short bursts up to 40 yards, which was much faster than either of us in our flip flops or sneakers. The thought of that made the annoyance of the mosquitoes feel far less urgent. Another fun fact: they are carnivorous. There went my hope of gathering up some greens and throwing them in the sprinting lizard's path, just in case, he was in the mood for fiber. Then I noticed they weren't just lurking, they were circling. The occasional hiss as one got too close to another seemed much louder than it really was. I realized that the only thing between us and a potential animal kingdom takeover was the high railing made of wood. Another fun fact: their jaws are strong enough to crush small to medium diameter bones. You put two and two together and see how your comfort zone is. We quickly and quietly exited the gazebo from the only entrance, which faced away from the lake and the menacing lizards. That felt prudent. About 50 feet out, as we rounded a shady bend, an even bigger lizard greeted us. Massive and silver. It hauled itself out of the water just to our right with a fat, thrashing tilapia in its jaws. The scene was straight out of some nightmare nature film. Only this time, we were in the documentary. The lizard ignored us, intent on its sashimi lunch. It slithered under a tree, looking pleased with itself as any predatory reptile could with lunch in its jaws. Just when I thought it would actually be kind of cool to get closer and watch a water monitor destroy a fish and that the worst was over, a bigger monitor appeared. The intent on an easy snatch and run lunch evident as he assertively went right to the kill. Blackie was the biggest lizard we'd seen yet, easily 8 feet or more snout to tail end, and they got into it, snapping jaws, hissing, swishing tails, fighting over the fish like a couple of drunks brawling over the last swig off the jug. It was a fast moving game of who's going to get lunch first, only the players were straight up terrifying. The monitors were fast, way faster than I'd expected. They were a blur of scales, teeth, tails, and aggressive posturing, twisting and spinning, biting and writhing, all in the kind of frenzied lizard wrestling match that seemed to go on forever. It wasn't graceful or elegant. It was raw, primal, and fast in a way that made me think twice about getting closer to shoot a better video. Blackie won out, the tilapia now in its jaws, as the silver beast retreated into the water, disappearing with the beaten demeanor of a creature who knew it had lost the game. We didn't stick around to watch the aftermath, beating a hasty retreat up the path, hearts pounding, grateful that the lizards were too busy with each other to care about what kind of meat we might be. We walked away from the lake, breathing intentionally, slowly lowering our guards. It wasn't until we were a few hundred yards out of lizard territory, away from the lake, that I felt a sense of normalcy return. I wrapped my arm tightly around Charlie's waist. She looked at me with a smile, the smile of feeling safe, secure, and with a new bond forged through unexpected adventure and shared experience. We headed back toward the main gate, making our way along Si Lom Road to the eyeglass shop. I picked up my new specs, and they were perfect. They fit me better and had an incredible precision of focus, much better than my previous very expensive pair. I relaxed into myself, which was no small miracle considering the amount of primal stress we'd been under moments before. I asked the young woman at the desk if she knew there were dinosaurs just across the road in the park. She smiled and said they were cute. Cute? WTF! She obviously needed new glasses, too. Despite the persistent low voltage adrenal hum still buzzing from our close encounter with creatures that could dismantle a human without breaking a lizard sweat. Do lizards sweat? I felt sabai, relaxed. Maybe it was the glasses. Maybe it was the relief of leaving the lizard kingdom behind. No, it was Charlie by my side, willingly participating in and around my life, as I was with her relaxed mood that spoke volumes about the meaning of comfort. But it was mutual, an emotional and unspoken give and take. It was a beautiful marriage of compatibility that we were both enjoying. It was early afternoon when I was struck by a sudden and insistent craving for a cheeseburger. It wasn't something I expected to miss in Thailand, but there it was. I asked Chalermon if she ever had a cheeseburger. She said yes, but it wasn't quite what she'd imagined, and not all that great. It didn't please her, but I did. Ha! Larry one cheeseburger zip. I'm proud that I outscored a cheeseburger. However, I have a strict rule. Rarely will I succumb to fast food or chain restaurants where the menus are creatively vibrant, but the ingredients are mere commodities to be foisted onto whoever schleps through the door. It's a rare exception that I'll break it. That happens on road trips where family owned joints just off a highway are as hard to find as a live dodo. But living in a place, in a community? No. I treat those fast food chains as if they're serving up Ebola in a bun with a side with the fries. However, sometimes hunger makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. And that cheeseburger craving, as irrational as it was, felt necessary. I almost caved, such was my craving. Along the sidewalk just down from us was a burger joint. One of those fast food places that, in a pinch, will satisfy an olfactory lust for a flame broiled cheeseburger. The scent of flaming beef was drafting out onto the street like a siren song. The dirty trick that cued up my craving. But I refused to go down that road. I saw the vent from the kitchen hoods above the street side door. Bastards. I pulled up a map app on my phone and found a locally owned burger joint a few blocks away instead. We strolled hand in hand to 25 Degrees Burger Bar instead of caving to the gravitational pull of King McJack Crack. The burger? Better than average, made with locally sourced ingredients. It was exactly what I needed to scratch that itch, though the brioche bun, while a nice touch, was a little on the sweet side. Chalermon, however, was unimpressed. How could this be? How could I consider a future with someone who doesn't enjoy a cheeseburger? That's like saying you believe in but hate Santa Claus. Burgers not your thing, Charlie? I teased her with fake exasperation. She gave me a noncommittal shrug. Too much at same time, she said, as I reached over to gently wipe a dab of ketchup from the corner of her mouth. She smiled, then dipped her finger in more ketchup and dabbed it back to the same corner so I could do it again. Fixin'. Burgers are America's, and now one of the world's answers to a gnawing stomach, in close contention with pizza, hot dogs, noodles, and street tacos for what scratches that itch better. And of course, with burgers come fries, as if we needed more. Charlie didn't like how everything was crammed into one ridiculously huge bite, and I understood. Some burgers are stacked so high it's like trying to bite into a mattress. It's a trend for sure. Bigger is better. The towering burger is a skyscraper of self importance in a sesame seed bun. But let's be honest, it's not necessary. These days, many people don't eat until they're simply satisfied. They eat until they can't breathe, which induces that gut bomb effect. As I've aged, I've come to admire cultures that lean towards smaller portions. No monstrous plates that leave you in a coma because, let's face it, nothing kills a dinner date or party vibe faster than collapsing onto a couch after a heavy meal, brain fogged, body bloated, praying for a pillow and the mercy of unconsciousness, while trying to maintain eye contact and pretend you were still capable of lucid conversation. After lunch, Charlie needed to head back to her store. I had watched how hard she worked, and when she's there, she has two employees that help out and cover her off days. And even when she's not at the store, she's placing orders, paying invoices, planning deliveries to restaurant and private customers, or pre planning for upcoming harvests. This time I wasn't about to let her brush me off with a wave and a smile. I tagged along, leaving her with no exit strategy. I made it obvious that there wouldn't be an out for Charlie today. She tried. She really tried to talk me out of spending my afternoon and evening bagging sales and replenishing displays. I listened, then ignored her pleads with a firm but gentle, "No way, Jose." I had to explain that phrase to her, and told her that whatever she needed, except for me to leave her side, that I would gladly take care of, leaving her to help her customers. She said, "You traveling? Why you work?" I explained that I simply wanted to be with her, to help, no matter what she had to do. She sighed. She smiled. She kissed my hands. She relented. While she unlocked, still shaking her head at my insistence, I rolled up and opened up. We jumped into tasks together, pulling out display tables, setting them up, side by side. I shadowed and mirrored her every move to make sure my help was up to her exacting standards. I'd noticed the layout before, so it was fast, efficient, and smooth. She glanced at me once or twice, but didn't say a word, just let me be part of her flow. Inside, we started hauling fruit bins and trays from the walk in cooler. I was reaching up for a box of pineapples when she turned and launched herself into my arms with far more force than I was prepared for. In fact, I wasn't prepared for any kind of sudden shifting momentum at all. She wrapped herself around me like a boa constrictor, and I stumbled to catch her. We toppled backward to the floor in a tangle of limbs and laughter. We landed hard, but laughing, and before I could fully register what was happening, she kissed me. Not a shy nor demure kiss. That kiss was deep and magnetic, a breath stealing, libido surging kiss. And then, strawberries. A whole box of them, falling from the shelf above, showered us with fat red fruit. The strawberries tumbled on and around us like a juicy red confetti cannon. Thank goodness there was another flat. We broke apart, laughing harder, the moment suspended in fructose and beautiful absurdity. She grabbed my wrists and pinned me down, her silken hair fanning around my head as she smiled her crazy, beautiful smile. I wasn't fighting in the least. "You work free," she said, grinning. "Or maybe kisses?" "Definitely kisses," I said without hesitation. "I'd take that pay rate all day long." The afternoon and evening flew by, her stock of everything running low by 9 p.m., making the breakdown a breeze by 10. We strolled hand in hand down the sidewalk toward the Sunreno, but as she turned to give me a kiss goodnight and continue on her way, I took her hand and pulled her along with me towards the hotel. Charlie pulled back and gave me a questioning look. I felt her hesitation, but I was not out to force myself on her. Not even close to my intention. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want her to spend the night, but not without her willingness. To ease her mind, I smiled and said, "Only a nightcap." "What is nightcap?" "It's when you really like someone and you don't want the night to end. You don't want them to go, so you invite them in for one drink, and that's it," I answered. "I'm inviting you in for a drink so we can talk face to face and not have to text another night away." "You not want me to go? I not want you go too." She came to the decision I was hoping for. "Yes, nightcap." Then I panicked. I had not thought this through. All I had on hand was bottled water, some fresh pressed watermelon juice, some ice, and a bottle of Johnny Walker Black in the freezer. JWB was plentiful and inexpensive in Thailand, so I kept a pint in the freezer for sipping before bedtime reading most nights. I had no idea if she liked scotch, and I could run around the corner and in 1 minute get anything she desired at the 7-Eleven. But we were already in the elevator, hands entwined, and there was no turning back. Charlie took in the apartment with intent, scanning the space as she cataloged details. I was grateful for my borderline compulsive OCD tidiness. Her place was homey and comfortably immaculate, and I didn't want to come off like a guy who lived out of a suitcase with a pile of dirty laundry tossed in the corner. She came back from the restroom nodding. "You stay so neat and clean. I like shower," she said with approval. I poured two small tumblers. Okay, they were hotel water glasses, but hey, you gotta make do with what you have. Do you think I am a barbarian and that we were going to drink from the bottle? And handed one to her. I asked if it was okay as she sipped the scotch. I order sometimes if I go out, she said. I asked where she liked to go, but she just shrugged. I don't know. I go out only a little. That surprised me. She was so beautiful, I figured she would be out on dates a lot. But my conversation with Jax caught up to my brain. As an aside, I've always wondered how women navigate a night out without spending most of it dodging creeps and half baked pickup lines. It has to be a demeaning and exhausting. Her answer made sense. I refilled us with heavier pours and led the way onto the balcony. Tomorrow would be her first night off, so I asked if she had any plans. She looked directly at me. House clean. Wash clothes. Water plants. Make love. What was that? I asked. Chalaman locked eyes with me, and for a long beat, we simply held each other's gaze. She didn't say a word. The world had paused, just for us, as our dynamic shifted. Seismically. Without breaking our gaze, she placed her glass down gently on the table, and in one graceful, fluid motion climbed onto my lap. There was something about the way she moved. Confident, feline, playful. The balcony felt electric. We didn't speak. The moment was still, so fragile, yet full to the brim with the wonder of anticipation. I woke to the low glow of early dawn filtering through the curtains, casting its soft light over everything. My eyes slowly opened, and there she was, Chalermon, asleep beside me. Her face relaxed in peace and slumber. A delicate smile adorned her beautiful features. I studied her forever, taking in the sight of her, the rise and fall of her breast, the gentle curve of her lips, the way her raven black hair, silken to the touch, spilled across the pillow in sensuous waves. In 2 days, she'd managed to become a part of my life, as if she had always been there, just waiting for our moment to arrive. I let out a quiet sigh of gratitude filled with genuine happiness and placed the gentlest of kisses on her brow. Careful to not disturb her, I slid out of bed. The air was cool, making my skin prickle as I padded softly across the room to the kitchen. I put the kettle on for coffee as I found myself lost in thought, replaying the past hours, trying to figure out how everything in my life had recently shifted into such a beautiful rhythm. The simple truth, though, was that in the quiet of the night, I'd found something I hadn't expected. A connection so raw and so real, it was impossible to define, let alone ignore. And I certainly didn't want to listen to the caution, crossing ahead warning careening in my skull. I needed to run screaming like a banshee into the maelstrom, come wreck or ruin. I glanced back at the bed, where she still slept peacefully. The morning light caught the outline of her figure, the snow white sheet covering her lower body, and for a second, it felt like time didn't matter anymore. I smiled, feeling the moment. I moved through the apartment like a ghost, careful not to wake Charlie, assembling breakfast with deliberate care. 2 bowls of Greek yogurt layered with granola and fresh fruit. Of course, there was mangosteen. Coffee pressed and steaming. 2 cups warming in hot water on the counter. Cream and sugar waiting in quiet alignment. It wasn't much, but it was honest. And it was healthy to boot. Bonus round awarded. I was placing spoons down when I felt arms wrap around me, soft and sure, and lips pressed against the back of my neck. I breathed deeply and sighed a smile of complete contentment, then giggled. She whispered, What? That better be you, Charlie, I quietly replied. She laughed. I closed my eyes and let that moment root itself. Her warmth, the silence, the hum of something beautiful. I reached down and held her arms around me, anchoring us both in a kind of quiet, fragile bliss. She whispered, soft and sweet, a phrase in Thai. If you're a voyeur, look it up. We enjoyed our early breakfast on the balcony, the growing hum of the city rising like background music, an overlay to something more intimate. I asked if I could take her to the Grand Palace and the Fra Ubosat to see the Emerald Buddha. I was sure she had been there, but imagining her reaction to the opulence and history, how she would laugh or whisper something private made me smile. She reminded me of her chores: laundry to wash and hang, a garden full of flowers and herbs to water, and a house to clean. You go, she said gently. Be tourist man. You love that. You write everything for me. I nodded, trying not to show the pain in my gut that landed before my second cup of coffee. I tried to cancel my day then and there. I knew that as amazing as the Grand Palace and Emerald Buddha would be, the experience would be pale without her, and I reminded her that I had dinner plans that night with one of my monk brothers. We both felt it, the slowing of the runaway freight train that had, for the past couple of days, barreled through our lives as if it urgently had somewhere to be, and there were no stops in between. It didn't stop, but the brakes hissed and squealed as it slowed to a saner pace. Neither of us wanted to ride the brakes because riding the high of where we were, the here and now of us, felt like magic. We both wanted that runaway crazy bliss. Alas, reality came, knocked on the door, then barged right in without permission. We cleaned up breakfast together, a comfortable rhythm forming between us. Then, before I could stop her, she spotted the full bag of laundry I'd stashed by the door and scooped it up like it was her mission. I take, she said with a grin, kissed me quick, then darted away, leaving her musical laugh hanging in the air, and was halfway out the door before I could protest. She couldn't get far, though, because the elevators were key card controlled. I chased her down, catching up as she stood waiting in the hallway, knowing I'd have to escort her down. Smart girl yet again. We rode in silence, standing close, the moment stretching thin and fragile. Sadness crept in quietly, like smoke seeping under a door. I let it come, let it wash over me, just to feel what it was made of. This wasn't just flirtation or the intoxicating haze of newness. It had weight and depth, and it left me needing her in all the best ways. It was in that brief descent as the elevator hummed its low song and Bangkok glittered in the morning light beyond the glass that I knew this wasn't infatuation. We were much more. I stopped at the front desk and asked for another key card. I started to introduce Chalarmwan to the woman at the front desk when suddenly they started talking coldly in Thai. I asked if everything was okay. Charlie refused to answer as she took the key, turned abruptly, and walked away. I looked at the clerk who had a sour look on her face and said firmly, We're going to have a talk when I get back, and I expect your boss to be here. I trotted after Chalarmwan and caught up quickly to the middle of the drive. What happened back there? I asked. Jinhua said I took her boyfriend, but that happened in school, long time ago. So, you did steal her boyfriend? Yes, but he took me from other too, she replied. And is that who you flipped into the canal? Charlie stopped short. I'm pretty sure I had just gotten Chakapan in trouble. Silence. No, that other stupid man, she replied. I reached for her and held her tight, simply holding her close. Is it okay if I text you all day and evening? I want to share everything I see and do with you, I whispered in her ear. If you not, I not talk to you, she said with a mock scowl, folding her arms in between us in exaggerated protest. It was the kind of pout that made me want to promise her the moon just to see her smile again. We can't have that now. I'll share my day and evening, everything, I promise. I already miss you, as I wrapped her in my arms. That stopped her. She softened, eyes searching for mine. We kissed slowly, unhurriedly. I liked this breaking the rules more and more. There's this thing Chalamwan does when she's truly happy, when the joy bubbles up so fast it can't help but spill out. She rises onto the balls of her feet and gives the tiniest bounce, like her heart's lifting her before she even knows it. It's subtle, like a secret only her joy knows. but I see it every time. It's pure, unfiltered delight, like watching a dappled sunbeam try to stay still. And God help me, it's so freaking cute, it hurts. She was bouncing on her balls in my arms at the end of our kiss, her smile back in place. Then she turned, my laundry bag slung over her shoulder, a light bounce in her step already cutting a path down the drive. I walked her to the road and stayed rooted to the spot at the end of the driveway, watching her grow smaller in the distance as my heart grew larger until she was just another part of the city. I didn't raise my voice with the front desk clerk, but I didn't leave a shred of ambiguity either. Calm, direct, and unapologetically clear. Charleroi would be coming and going from my apartment whenever she pleased. That wasn't up for discussion. I wasn't asking permission. I was drawing a line around her dignity. The manager, standing nearby, looked like she might object, but I held her gaze. I wasn't about to let anyone reduce Charlemont to a stereotype, especially not in her own neighborhood, where people should have known better. After a momentary pause, the manager broke the silence. She stated there would be no issue. Then, with a sharp glance, she made sure her desk clerk knew who made the final call. At 6:45 a.m., the big wheels of Bangkok's daily grind were already turning. Figuring out how to get from Sunreno to the Grand Palace was a puzzle. At this early stage in Bangkok, my understanding of the public transit system was barely above lost and blind newborn. My research felt like I was trying to solve a Rubik's Cube missing half its stickers well in REM stage, and possibly drunk. There was no clean BTS or MRT route from my neighborhood to the Grand Palace. Just a mess of transfers and enough crosstown gymnastics to qualify for the Thai Olympic team. So I did the only sensible thing. I scrapped the strategy, waved down a cab, and let laziness wear the crown. Occam's razor, once again, saving the day with blunt force elegance. Was it the cheapest choice? No. But pretending I understood the city's labyrinthine routes at this point was an exercise in futility. I'd learned, but this was not that day. Maps and alternatives went out the window faster than a lit butt. The roads were starting to hum with early morning life. Bankers, lawyers, coders, and consultants, and number crunchers, all chasing a few extra baht, riding that Bangkok hustle. Their energy mirrored the rising burn of the city's movement. Packed buses, weaving scooters, barking tuk-tuks, and taxis like mine. Gritty, grounded, and just as much a part of the hustle as anyone in a suit. 25 minutes later, I was unceremoniously dumped at the corner of Na Phra Lan and Maharat roads, near the river. My cabbie barely slowed down. He was already eyeing a U turn back to the business district, chasing every fare he could before the business bell rang. The morning air wasn't pleasant. It held that specific humid breath promising the coming heat, while the sun, still low and merciful, spilled its hesitant golden light across the pavement. My feet found the long stretch of Nafra Lan Road, a grand boulevard pulsing with the low, undeniable rhythm of the city beginning to stir. Beneath my flops, this broad stretch felt less inert stone and more like living history, and the sheer improbable reality of being right there felt like a jolt. A perfect convergence of geography, gut feeling, and something approaching jaw dropping awe as the looming walls of the Grand Palace stood sentinel duty on my right. It took a millisecond to grasp the undeniable truth. I wasn't charting undiscovered territory. The early birds, like me, were already there, a serpentine belt of anticipation coiling its way toward the entrance. It was still stupid early. The heat, tropical humidity already clingy was making its presence even more insistent as we stood shoulder to shoulder, engaged in our own quiet, impatient dance. A collective human tide drawn from the same irresistible current. History, the sheer glittering weight of the Emerald Buddha's mystique, the universal yearning to witness something so genuinely grand that words invariably fumble over it. We were all here for the culture, the education, the pilgrimage. FYI, the price of admission at the Grand Palace can land like an uppercut. It's easy to get used to the norm quickly. The ludicrously low 10, 20, or 50 baht charged for entry into ancient temples tucked away along sois and boulevards. Wonders that ask for barely a pittance to see grandeur. 100 baht approaches audacious. But 500? A solid 15 US dollars? By Thai standards, that's exorbitant. The cost of a dozen excellent street meals. Yet, standing there inside the gates, looking at the sheer scale and majesty of the palace grounds sprawling before you, and considering everything that ticket actually gives you, that initial sting begins to dissipate. It starts to feel, if not exactly cheap, then justified in a way that few tourist attractions anywhere manage. Because it's not just a ticket to walk around the Grand Palace grounds, it's a full blown, slightly overwhelming package. They hand you a full color 6 panel map, vibrant, meticulously detailed, loaded with narrative that attempts to guide you through every glittering temple, statue, towering stupa, royal hall, and sacred relic jammed into the compound. There are stacks of glossy pamphlets in 20 different tongues detailing the aesthetics, the history stretching centuries, the cultural weight of everything within. It's a self guided deep dive, whether you wanted one or not. And they offer free guided tours in 10 languages inside. A tempting prospect for many. The unexpected bonus, the cherry on top of that pricey entry fee, an included ticket to the Royal Theatre for a performance of traditional Thai dance, drama, and music. My mind immediately went there. Finish soaking in the soul adjusting monumental sights throughout the grounds, learn a hell of a lot about their world, then slip into air conditioned oblivion for an hour or so to watch ancient stories unfold on stage? Absolutely enticing. Right then, though, the immediate task was simply absorbing the staggering magnitude of what before and around me. This wasn't just another historical site. This was one of Thailand's keystones, a place where centuries of history, layered mythology, profound philosophy, royalty, and staggering art had collided with force, congealing into a dazzling, complex reality of gold, meticulously carved stone and wood, with craftsmanship born from dynasties. This, I grasped within moments, was a living, breathing son of Ayutthaya. Stepping in through the gate, I hung a sharp right. Didn't really have a choice, as that's where security pointed and pavement led. Wow, instant payoff. It wasn't just a sight, it was 8 of them. The elaborate towers known as Phra Asada Maha Chedi, rising like silent sentinels, each one uniquely ornate and magnificently covered in design attributes that would make the most audacious glittering disco dress blush in shame. They towered against the morning sky. Each one stood magnificent and undeniably present, less like architecture and more like a solid, irrefutable moment to something vast and grand and greater than the sum of their collective grandeur. The kind of thing that silences the monkey chatter for way more than a minute. As I walked the grounds, the air grew warmer. My thumbs were working overtime on the phone, texting Charlie, because of course I was. But something was off. Not outright grumpy, maybe, but definitely a little snippy? A noticeable cloud hung over her usual unrelenting sunshine, and I could feel it through the pixels, the shift in tone. I did what any lover would do. I playfully grilled her, poking and prodding with questions until she finally fessed up. The truth, simple and human in its honesty. She missed me. She'd rather be with me, sharing the rising heat and the unfolding spectacle that stuck in her routine back home. Even though she added with bluntness that only someone who's lived here, someone who has lived with this history can wield, she'd been there, seen that, got the t-shirt. My immediate reflexive and honest response? I'll cut it short. See you in an hour. A beat passed, the silence of the text thread louder than the murmurs of the crowd. Then her reply came, sharp and clear, cutting through the digital space with force. No! I sorry. You explore, see my country. I wish I was with you. A simple directive, yes, but laced with longing and generosity that instantly reframed the moment, anchoring me right back in the privilege of walking those grounds, seeing it through my eyes as she intended. I sent her a love heart. The Grand Palace, official address for the king and queen since the late 18th century, 1782 AD if you were keeping score, is a hell of a lot of history to pack into one place. And it wears that regal reputation like a glittering cloak. 218,000 square meters. A sprawl that feels less like a compound and more like its own incredibly opulent city state. A stunning blend of history, working government offices, because the machinery of state doesn't stop for tourists, and sheer unadulterated majesty. It's the kind of place where you could realistically wander for days, get utterly lost in the maze of temples and courtyards, and know you've missed half the story, maybe more. Every tucked away corner, every intricate temple, every stone building seemed to hum forgotten conversations and the weighty tales they've collected over centuries. The royal residences are impressive, the throne hall dripping with historical significance, the coronation hall undeniably grand, but they don't actually hold the charged current. Nope. The undisputed heavyweight champ, the real star attraction on everyone's lips, is the Emerald Buddha. And listening to that buzz, reading the guidebooks, seeing the crowds funnel towards his temple, you'd build them up in your head, wouldn't you? You'd picture some glowing, towering figure, maybe 80, 100 feet tall, the kind of presence that could stop traffic just by existing. Instead, he's a modest, almost unassuming little fellow. Seriously. Tucked away inside the Phra Ubasat temple like a precious, undersized secret, he's revered by millions of people across the globe who hold profound devotion for that diminutive green figure perched up high. And yet, his physical presence doesn't demand attention with his size. He's quiet. You have to look for him, seek him out amidst the opulence. It's the devotion he inspires, the history he's lived. It's the belief surrounding him that makes him massive, not his actual dimensions. It's a hell of a cosmic joke. Every year, millions come to gaze up at that jade colored little fellow. That means you stand in line, packed with the devout alongside the merely curious, devotees rubbing shoulders with tourists, a quintessential cross section of humanity drawn by history and reverence, all desiring a glimpse. Once you were finally inside, unless you manage to find a spot to sink down onto the massive rug for a moment of prayer or quiet introspection away from the throng, it's a pretty brief window. You get maybe a few minutes tops to stand there in a state of awe before you're nudged along, ushered to make space for the next wave, like cattle being processed, but for spiritual illumination. You don't get to just linger, unpack your spiritual bags, and set up camp. Time doesn't slow down there. It accelerates, pushing you forward. Perhaps because the presence of an iconic symbol this deeply revered, this historically weighted, is simply too potent to absorb for too long anyway. Or maybe they simply need to move the line. As hallowed and royal ground, which are also a major global draw, the grounds aren't just well kept. It's manicured to within an inch of its life, spotless and polished to a degree that feels absurdly immaculate. There's an undeniable, almost unsettling precision in every corner, a careful, near obsessive perfection that borders on performative art. You walk through feeling like you are exploring history and that you've stepped into an artist's hyperreal impossible dream, where everything is arranged just so, down to the precise way the sunlight decides to hit a specific patch of gold leaf. It's beautiful, yes, breathtakingly so, but it demands a careful respect that feels deliberate, like you were meant to admire the sheer effort of maintaining this level of flawlessness. What really hit me first, what grabbed me by the eyeballs and refused to let go, are the relentless surfaces: mosaic tiling, intricate inlays, shimmering mirrors. They don't just decorate, they cover almost every single vertical inch, transforming each building from an inert structure into a living, breathing, shouting piece of art. Forget subtle narratives. Each building tells its story through an incredibly overwhelming interplay of colors. The structures themselves, gleaming greens that look freshly washed every hour, impossibly deep blues that defy naming, rich ripe oranges, and yellows so vibrant they feel like they're physically vibrating. They don't just sit there. They dance together in a dizzying assault on the senses, cranking the volume up on the visual world, making everything feel undeniably, almost aggressively, more alive. And setting it all off are those classic cascading red, green, and yellow roofs, tumbling down in that unmistakable Thai architectural style, looking less like construction and more like something meticulously brushed onto a canvas, straight out of some Technicolor painting. Some of the structures are also adorned with mind bending ceramic work, particularly the stupas, the ones that aren't covered with gold. Those are wrapped in multicolored, intricate mosaics. Everywhere you look, you're met with Naga, the multi headed snake beings from Hindu mythology. These creatures, symbolizing both the underworld and divine power, climb up the sides of buildings, hang out on the roofs and down stair railings, their tile coated bodies coiling around stupas guarding secrets from the past while protecting today and tomorrow. And then there are the rising flower gardens, which show scenes from the Buddha's life and teachings, adding another layer to the surreal beauty to the place. After a while, though, the overwhelming richness of it all started to blur into a surging psychedelic blitz. The colors, the patterns, the textures, they're all breathtaking, but it becomes exhausting. It's the visual equivalent of eating an Escoffier inspired 50-course feast in one sitting. Each bite, each turn of the eye, revealed something magnificent, but by the time you've taken it all in, your senses are stuffed. It's a kind of visual overindulgence that's hard to digest, but undeniably magnificent all the same. As I wandered through the grounds, I realized that this wasn't simply a collection of grand buildings and sacred temples. The place is teeming with mythical guardians of all shapes and sizes. The full range of netherworld creatures has found a home here. Dragons coiled around pillars, their sinuous bodies creating an eerie sense of motion in the still air. Garudas spread their wings in grand displays, their fierce eyes never leaving their guardianship over the realm. Shishi, lion dog beasts known for their magical powers to ward off evil spirits, are present. Everywhere I looked, spiritual protectors were etched, sculpted, or painted. The six pairs of giant Chinese yaksha guardians standing guard at various gateways around the compound caught my attention more than anything else. Those figures are a curious contradiction in an otherwise serene landscape. With their fierce stance, snarling expressions, warrior demeanor, and elaborate armor, they seem out of place in a space so brimming with calm and holiness. They are the kind of creatures that look like they'd leap from their stone bases if given half a chance just to lob your head off for even thinking impure thoughts. However, yaksha aren't harbingers of doom. They're benevolent nature spirits assigned to guard precious things. In this case, the temples and royal grounds. Still, their intensity adds a layer of tension to the otherwise tranquil atmosphere. Each yaksha is unique, carved with striking details that bring their personalities to life in ways that are simultaneously intimidating and fascinating. They're beautiful, their terrifying visage and attitude formidable. I found myself wishing there was more to learn about each one, what legends they embody, but in a way, that mystery added to their allure. One of the more surprising features on the grounds was an incredibly detailed replica of Angkor Wat. Though perfectly to scale, it is much smaller than its Cambodian twin. But that doesn't make it any less impressive. The craftsmanship is astonishing. Every intricate carving, every delicate stone relief seems to come to life despite the more compact size. While it's far too small to walk through like the original, it still holds an air of grandeur that stops short of feeling like a toy or a miniature. I couldn't help but admire the effort that went into making such a precise replica, with every detail preserved. And just to really pile on the value after that initial sticker shock, the entry ticket also buys you passage into several museums within the complex, which are packed with incredible artworks spanning the centuries of Thailand's vibrant, complex history. Add all that up, the sheer scale, the dazzling detail, the multi hued layers of history and faith, plus the access to those collections, and yeah, that once shocking entrance fee starts looking like one hell of a bargain after all. Just a heads up, though, because despite the timeless history and spiritual weighty grandeur, the grounds have a schedule, and they stick to it like a royal wedding plan. They lock it down at 3:30 p.m. sharp every single day. And by sharp, they mean it. Strictly adhered to. So if you want more than a hurried, sweaty sprint past glittering things as they usher you towards the exit, plan accordingly. I'd been tethered to my phone all morning, locked in a steady stream of texts with Chalermon, sharing everything and anything my experience was giving to me. It was the kind of conversation that felt impossible to put down for more than a minute, each ping pulling me back in, a constant quiet current flowing between 2 points across the city. Eventually, the screen lit up with a message that had just the right mix of genuine affection and playful exasperation. It read, "Okay, okay. Tell me everything tonight when we have an eternity in the stars to catch up." I sent her a question mark because her text was amazing. "I use your translator app." Smiley face, she replied. I burst out laughing, even more smitten. Then came the three words. Those three words. Simple, direct, and they crash landed in my soul, making everything else fade away, reducing the grand palace, the crowds, the heat, all of it, to background noise. I love you. Those simple words appeared on screen amidst the chatter of a Tuesday morning in Bangkok, landed with an intensity that sent me to another dimension. For a split second, I felt the irresistible pull to type impulsive, reckless anythings that would have me abandoning all plans, wheeling around, and rushing straight back to her, to the calm, loving connection waiting there. Instead, standing there in the middle of the Grand Palace grounds, a world away, yet connected by cell towers, I paused, smiled to myself, and sent back what felt to me like the only honest reply in that wonderful moment where profound emotion collided with the day's itinerary. All right, I typed. Sounds like a plan. Just so you know, I'm off to Chinatown in a minute to eat my way through guts and gore. I waited and waited and waited. No reply. Teasing. I love you too. I have fallen deeply, incredibly in love with you. But I am hitting up Chinatown too. Winky face. Unsurprisingly, she didn't reply to that one. We'd both thrown solid love roundhouses that had landed fair and square. Then again, what do you even say to that? A declaration of love immediately followed by plans involving awful. As I tucked the phone away, silenced for now, its glow extinguished in my pocket, the die was well and truly cast. My feet were already carrying me towards the tuk-tuks and the glorious insanity of Bangkok's Chinatown, its alleys and street-side labyrinths promising my next hit of sensory overload. Adventure was waiting. Chinatown. Not just the aromas, the sizzling mystery meats, and the bubbling pots of who knows what. All those visceral, delicious unknowns were destination enough on their own for a man with an appetite. No, the real underlying current that made it sing lay in the knowledge that these stories, these tastes, Those tastes, sights, and sounds would wend their way back to her, to be shared, laughed over, lived again, together. I hopped into a tuk tuk. It was fire engine red with yellow flames painted down the sides. I mean, really, how could I not choose that one? Committing to my favorite exhilarating transport. My driver was a maniac behind the tiller, threading the needle through impossible gaps, weaving through traffic like he was delivering a hellhound late for his date with the devil. The 10 minutes it took to get to Chinatown felt like a white knuckle eternity compressed into a peaking psychedelic rush, but I was more than fine with it. The day was pitching perfect, hot enough to remind me that I was gloriously alive, vibrating with the city's energy. And my heart? It was impossibly full, buzzing with childlike wonder, a feeling stirred by Charlermoine's last text, that jolt of pure connection. But it was also charged up by the undeniable pulse of Bangkok itself, a pulse that constantly throws the improbable and the profound into your path. He peeled off the main drag, ducking down a narrow back lane, the kind of almost invisible alleyway that only locals or the truly lost find, the preferred method of arrival into the belly of the beast. It wasn't long before he slammed to a stop. Yawarat Market loomed ahead. Not simply a market, but an old school, no nonsense food lover's entire neighborhood paradise. I'd been fantasizing about that visit since the moment I'd landed in Thailand. It's legendary for its insane selection of street foods. It has everything. And I do mean everything. From the everyday you can get that anywhere to dozens of roasted or fried insects, to snakes and frogs, alongside 100 types of dumplings, to sizzling stir fried and deep fried, you name it, to curries, soups, stews, mystery meats, fish of infinite variety served in just as many ways, to noodles, organs, and ice creams. All of it offered at prices so inexpensive that it felt criminal to participate in purchase. I couldn't wait to dive in. First stop was an unassuming stall radiating big heat and serious aromas. I pointed, ordered. A bowl of lo mein arrived, topped generously with a whole crab, and its fatty roe with a slab of seared foie gras. It wasn't just good, it was a bite of unadulterated heaven. Rich, buttery, and salty, the subtle mineral tang from the roe cutting through the richness of everything else. The noodles beneath masterfully tossed to achieve perfect texture and bite. It was 100 baht. It was the kind of dish that makes you pause, chew slowly, and genuinely question every other noodle bowl you've ever encountered on the planet. Next up, wok fried dumplings. Pork, shrimp, oyster, and ox blood. They were all crispy on the outside, and each one was a unique masterpiece. They were, simply put, perfect. Blisteringly hot and utterly complexly satisfying. Each bite a small, delicious validation of the journey, a taste of the adventure I came looking for. Then, almost on cue, as if the sheer culinary density of the place had conjured them into existence, Chinese fried pork choplets a la Szechuan, the same kind I'd found up in Chiang Mai, stacked high, crisp, and gloriously golden. I don't even know what they're called, but since I'd tried them up north, let's just say that, like a junkie chasing after that first high, I needed them. I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The true exploration, the glorious descent into the market's labyrinth, had only just begun. Moving in deeper, my eyes locked onto skewers, seared water buffalo heart, kidneys, and stomach on sticks that had been braised in some delicious stock of unknown origin, then flash seared over glowing hardwood, unapologetically charred in a few places, glistening under the lights, utterly, undeniably tantalizing. Yes, please. They were all tender, yielding easily to the bite, a perfect balance of savory depth and bold elemental flavor that felt utterly right skewered street side. Clearly not on any sort of sensible health kick, nor did I plan to start, I dove headfirst into another Chinatown staple: chicken livers, skins, and gizzards. Grilled over hot coals until smoky and slightly crisp on the edges, they were served simply, dusted with a sprinkle of soy and black pepper. And yeah, they had enough grease clinging to them to make them feel sinfully decadent. This wasn't clean eating. This was honest, delicious, unadulterated street food. But no, naturally, the culinary mission still wasn't complete. The market's pull was relentless, demanding full immersion. There was grilled tarantula. I'd eaten them before in Mexico, and they are surprisingly delicious, like a cross between crab and scallop. That was another, yes please, as I nibbled on legs that gave way with a fantastic crunch. So much better than scorpion. And there was durian, the infamous spiky fruit, legendary across their region for a reason. Durian hits your nostrils like a physical blow. It smells like a butcher's cracked scrap trash can left baking in the blazing summer sun, maybe with some old jock straps thrown in for good measure. It is objectively an assault on the nostrils, a pungent warning. But, and this is the crucial faith requiring part, if you are willing to push through that formidable olfactory barrier, if you commit, it tastes like something else entirely. Something sweet, profoundly custardy, bordering on the divine. A creamy, unctuous richness that coats the tongue with vanilla cheesecake, almonds with a whipped drizzle of caramel on top. I dug in with a small plastic spoon, the flesh spreading across my tongue in all its complex, undeniably funky glory. There is simply nothing else remotely like it on earth. And it's glorious. I ate my way through the market, passing between stalls where food vendors hawked everything from grilled fish and prawns to meats that would make most Westerners balk. But that was my kind of heaven. Noise, aromas, textures, and flavors all tangled up in one place. I pulled myself away from the food zone to wander into the maze of alleyways. The internal warren of Chinatown is famous for its endless blocks and alleys of vendors selling hard goods. Anything and everything, from cheap electronics to knockoff designer bags and luggage. Old school trinkets you didn't know you needed until you saw them. Like a Godzilla butane lighter. You press his dorsal fin down and fire blows out from his jaws. Completely awesome. The alleys seem to stretch on forever, each one packed with more sellers, more sights, and more of the pulse that makes every Chinatown feel alive at all hours of the day and night. Wandering deeper into the labyrinth, I began to get it. The neighborhood was organized like an urban jungle, each section a distinct ecosystem. One alley was a mecca for luggage, piled high with everything from basic carry on stuff, fancy, heavy leather bags on wheels. Another block was a shrine to women's shoes: heels, flats, sandals, boots, CFM and BDSM, and everything in between. If you wanted to look fashionable in a Bangkok alley, there was your runway. Then there was the cookware section, where I could have spent the rest of the day just staring at the treasure trove of woks, cleavers, and other blades, bamboo steamers in a dozen sizes, induction and gas burners, strainers, drainers, and spiders. There was every Asian kitchen tool I could imagine. I found myself longing to buy an entire kitchen's worth of tools. They made me wish I was living in Bangkok with a full kitchen to play in. Instead, I opted for a 12-pack of beautiful hand-milled ebony chopsticks with silver inlaid bands. Not a bad souvenir. Practical, but with enough elegance to make them feel special and memorable. It was in that moment that the real luxury of Chinatown struck me. It wasn't the shiny goods or the endless choices, but the experience itself. That's the filling. A few more turns, a few more alleys, and I found myself in a sprawling block devoted to fungus, herbs, chilies, spices, and legumes. It felt like stepping into the very heart of a medicinal garden. Many ingredients I'd never seen before in my life. Mushrooms in untold varieties, herbs in every color, fresh and dried that could cure ailments I didn't even know I had. WebMD's got nothing on a Chinatown fungus and herbal shop. Spices that were so fresh that aroma almost caught in the throat, and piles of chilies so vibrant they practically burned my nostrils being near them. It was a jungle of smells, a riot of color, and an assault on the senses in the best possible way. The next alley was a parade of toys. Everything from plastic dinosaurs, cars, balls, and dolls to knockoff versions of whatever toy was selling on infomercials. Then the knockoff luxury brands bags, watches, sunglasses, underwear, all in various stages of being authentic. But it wasn't just the merchandise that caught my attention, it was the energy. It all came together in a raging symphony of blatant consumerism. But no matter how many distractions there were, I kept coming back to the thing, the food. It was everywhere. The aroma of sizzling meat, the sharp tang of soy, fish sauce and garlic, the sweet sugary scent of freshly fried desserts wafting through the air. Each alley seemed to have its own specialty: grilled skewers, fried rice, wok seared veggies, dim sum, sweets, meats on sticks, duck on rice. It was sensory overload in the best possible way, and I couldn't help but keep eating, tasting, and savoring bite after bite, knowing that this was a rare opportunity to get lost in the rampant indulgence of a food lover's paradise. Heading back from the glorious, greasy trenches of Chinatown, the immediate, undeniable need was a shower and a change of clothes. Dinner with Sam, my monk brother, was the next appointment on the books. A welcome bit of grounding after the day's sensory overload. And I was looking forward to catching up. But there was something else, something quieter, but far more pressing, sitting squarely in my heart. Drawn by an utterly necessary impulse, I picked up 3 bouquets of vibrant tropical flowers, a riot of fragrant blooms, variegated leaves, and stalks of a dozen hues. On the blessedly air conditioned MRT ride back across the city, Chinatown to Safan Taksin was easy. Amidst the drone of the train and the shuffle of passengers, I carefully rearranged them, combining the disparate elements into one riotously large bouquet, layering scent and stem with the focused intensity of a painter loading a brush, each placement an unspoken message. The flower arranging project on that crowded commuter train drew a few curious smiles from fellow passengers, a small shared moment of unexpected humanity in the daily grind. A wonderfully flamboyant ladyboy gave me a big thumbs up, dramatically batting her eyelashes and asking in a perfect exaggerated female voice if they were for her. We shared a genuine laugh, the kind that cuts through language barriers and dissolves the day's edges. She grabbed the seat next to me when it opened up. Grinning, she leaned in conspiratorially and told me the girl receiving them was incredibly lucky, as she helped me slip stems and petals into perfect position. My response came instantly, heartfelt and true, without a second of hesitation. "No," I said, holding the vibrant blooms. "I am the lucky one." And in that moment, surrounded by strangers but connected by that simple exchange and the intention in my hands, I knew it was the simple, undeniable truth. Back above ground, emerging from the urban circulatory system, I flagged down a cab. The mission shifted gears, shed the sweat and smells of the day's explorations, and prepped for the evening's different connection. It was a fast shower, a rapid shave, then putting on a white Brooks Brothers button down shirt, pairing it with my olive linen drawstring pants. The goal, elegant and presentable. Certainly. Ready for dinner? Yes. But more importantly, feeling a quiet, hopeful readiness for whatever came later. First, though, I had flowers to deliver. I stepped out of the Sunreno driveway and cautiously made my way along the sidewalk towards Chalermwan's shop. My eyes found her, radiant in the late afternoon sunlight. She'd slipped into her store with a customer, swallowed up by the daily rhythm of her business. That was my cue. Moving with a stealth that felt both necessary and absolutely absurd, like I was planting classified documents instead of flowers. I crept up the last few feet and gently laid the riotous bouquet across the top of our fruit, those deep purple mangosteens. Mission accomplished. I ducked back, melting into a shadowy alcove 2 doors down, out of sight, but positioned to catch the moment her eyes landed on the unexpected gift. From my hiding spot in the shadows, a nervous voyeur, I watched as she emerged from the shop. She handed off 2 bulging bags of fruit, and another satisfied customer was sent on their way. She turned back towards the stall, towards the mangosteens and their improbable splash of color, interrupting the neatly stacked produce, and stopped dead. The pause was wonderful. A flicker of confusion, then recognition bloomed across her face, and in a heartbeat she scooped them up, pulling the huge bundle into her arms, clutching the bouquet tightly to her chest. A smile erupted across her face, sudden and brilliant, a genuine burst of unrestrained joy that could have powered half the city grid. She bounced on her feet, spun around, turning in every direction, scanning the sidewalk, searching faces, looking for the culprit. The moment her back was turned, I made my move, abandoning my lookout, covering the short distance across the pavement that suddenly felt vast. Reaching her before she could turn, I wrapped my arms around her from behind, pulling her back against me. I buried my face in her neck, breathing her in, feeling the impossible rightness of being close after the day's distance. I kissed her neck softly, over and over, a quiet, desperate, thankful reaffirmation that needed no words. Not yet. I'm madly in love with you, I whispered into her ear, the words raw and entirely true, a confession offered only to her in the midst of the indifferent street bustle. And then the simple human truth that underpinned everything, the weight of the day's miles and moments. And I missed you so much it hurt. The entirety of that ache of separation felt throughout the morning and afternoon, released in a singular moment on that busy sidewalk. She dropped the flowers. Just let them fall, a sudden colorful splash on the pavement by her feet. She leaned back into me, completely relaxed after my embrace, a perfect counterweight to my own racing heart. Her hands rose, finding their place, cupping my head, holding me against her skin, against the unstoppable rhythm of her life on the street. I released her just enough to gently turn her around, pulling her fully into the moment. In that second, on that busy sidewalk, amidst the noise and the heat and the indifferent flow of the city, the vendors calling out, the tuk-tuks roaring by. Not kissing wasn't an option. We melted into each other right there. A sudden, quiet, still point in the turning world. Breathing each other in. Eyes open, locked. Seeing only each other. The rest of Bangkok, a blurred, irrelevant backdrop. I couldn't give a damn who saw. The faces that might have turned, the whispers that might have followed. None of it. All of that faded away. Inane noise against the undeniable magnetic truth of the connection binding us. I found my name for it. Purity. We lingered a while after our sidewalk tryst, still caught in the afterglow, chatting softly. I asked her if she'd wait for me tonight. Without hesitation, she said yes. With reluctance, I peeled myself away. I needed to get across town to meet Sam for dinner. On the way out, I stopped at the Sunreno to let Wing, the doorman, know that Chalermwan would be staying in my apartment that evening. He assured me that she'd be treated like royalty and that the manager had cleared the way, that she was not only expected, but to be treated with utmost respect. That settled, I flagged another cab and headed to the restaurant Sam claimed was the best Thai food in all of Bangkok. I was excited for the meal, but even more for the company. Sam and I had talked Thai food during downtime at I Monastery. Over long afternoons, we'd swap stories about food and restaurants. He'd get the soft look in his eyes when he described his favorite dishes, like he was seeing home through taste memory and enjoyed relating the details to me. At some point, we made a promise to each other. When I got to Bangkok, we'd meet for dinner at a place he and his family swore by, Horsamut, tucked away at 8 Ta Kam Alley, right alongside the river. If you ever find yourself in Bangkok, go. It's got style, location, great food and drink, and it is a fantastic romantic setting for date nights. But do yourself a favor and make a reservation. It's required. My driver did his best cabbie magician moves, coaxing a path through Bangkok's Friday night traffic, ducking down alleys so narrow I could have reached out with a fingertip and gotten a manicure along the walls. We finally pulled into a discreet driveway that sloped down toward the water. There, a cement and steel structure stood, the sharp angles softened by trailing vines, light spilling from hidden spotlights above and below. It was clearly upscale, in that understated, if you have to ask the price kind of way. The other diners looked like they had stylists on speed dial and had just left a GQ cover shoot. The moment I mentioned I was meeting Sam, the hostess snapped into action, leading me upstairs to the open air dining deck and the best table in the house. Polished wood, hard stone accents, large tropical foliage, and soft lighting set the mood for a sleek and modern restaurant. Sam sat waiting, smiling. He was looking forward to our reunion as much as I was. He stood to greet me, and for a second, it didn't feel like we were in a restaurant at all. It felt like we were in a pocket of time, borrowed from a life we no longer lived. Our monk robes were gone, but the monk life still resided within, though we were worlds apart from our days at the monastery. We hugged like brothers, and I felt something in my chest go soft. But even as I sat down, even as the waiter placed chilled towels in our hands and poured sparkling water as if we were royalty, a part of me was already rushing back to our apartment. Yeah, it was now our apartment. Charlemagne was there, waiting. I'd asked her to wait. She immediately said yes, knowing this night was important. But it was a wrench for both of us. I wanted to hold on to every second with Sam. That would probably the last time we'd sit across from each other like this, not as monks or laymen, but as two men who'd met somewhere remote, bonded by faith and found kinship. And yet I could feel the hours slipping, the weight of time stacked on both ends. I felt duplicitous and yet so fond of Sam that I didn't want that part of the night to end either. To this day, I've never had better Thai food. No contest. From the first bite to the last, it felt less like eating and more like being serenaded by Thai flavors, textures, and temperature with elevated presentation that I had not encountered at any other restaurant. The cavalcade of food flowed. Giant river prawns were seared just enough to retain their sweetness. Pad Thai so fantastic it felt like a tribute to the noodle gods. The tuna tartare was absurdly good. Clean, spicy, citrus bright, and yet the flavor of fresh ahi shined through all the fanfare. The tartare came with a black and white baked rice cracker that was as beautiful as it was tasty and functional. The pork and shrimp dumplings were delicate as silk, yet deeply satisfying. Then the stuffed squid. It practically dissolved under my fork. Even the rice, sticky and fried, tasted like it had been touched by some ancient culinary spirit. Each dish was a masterclass. Thai cuisine, yes, but transfigured and upgraded. Familiar, but reimagined with grace married to power. It felt reverential. Sam and I caught up over the feast, slowly and easily, as if we'd done this every week for the last 10 years. We talked about life after the robes, his filled with family obligations, work demands, the friction and flow of Bangkok's daily rhythm. He didn't complain. He just said it like it was, in that calm, even voice of his that even made the world seem a little more manageable. I chipped in with some life skills and business advice earned over years of dealing with the same workflow hassles he was dealing with. I think it helped. Sam certainly seemed to take what I said to heart. And all the while, that food. Wow! I excused myself and wandered down to the restroom. When I came back up and stepped onto the deck level, I stopped dead. I hadn't looked out when I arrived. I'd been caught up in the joy of seeing Sam again, the swift ushering to the table, the anticipation of the food. But now, as I crested the last step and glanced out past the railing, a vision hit me square in the chest. Wat Arun, lit in full nighttime glory, it stood across the river like a power dream made of glowing stone. Its central prang towered upward, etched in brash relief and golden light against the inky black sky. It didn't shimmer, it radiated. It emitted otherworldly power, a silent radiance that didn't ask to be admired but demanded admiration. Power and presence. For a moment, I couldn't move. I just stood there, breathless. That stillness you spend years trying to cultivate on a cushion. I felt it in an instant. That vision? It's still my screensaver on my phone. I knew at that moment I'd be back tomorrow. No question. Unless Charlie had other ideas. Then Wat Arun would simply have to wait because there was no way in hell I'd spend another day without her. Sam dropped me off at the Sunreno. There was no ceremony to our goodbye, just warmth. A long look, a real hug, and a knowing silence that said everything. This might be the last time, and that's okay. That's life. No promises, just gratitude. But I know when I go back, I'll be taking Sam out to dinner. Someplace outrageous. Someplace I had found. It wasn't late, but it wasn't early either. The clock sliding just past 11 p.m. when I cracked open the apartment door as quietly as I could and slipped inside. I moved silently, thinking Chalermwan might already be asleep. We'd exchanged a few texts throughout the night. I tried to reassure her, promised I wouldn't be long, told her to make herself at home. I gave her the Wi Fi password, the code to the safe, everything short of a notarized affidavit. Still, there had been that note of something, curiosity tinged with unease. Her messages had a gentle edge. Who is Sam? Punk? Friend? Or something else? I snapped a picture. Me and Sam at the table. Mid-laugh. Faces soft in the candlelight. Plates half empty. Joy unmistakable. I sent it without commentary and let the image speak for itself. That photo? It's still one of my favorites out of thousands. Because it's not just a picture of dinner with a friend. It's a portrait of brotherly love and respect. Of two men who knew what the other had been through and honored that friendship through a fine meal in an amazing place. What I walked into when I opened the door wasn't the dim hush of sleep. It was something else entirely. The bedroom was aglow. Pillar candles flickering, casting shadows that moved gently with the AC's rhythm. The bouquet I'd left her earlier had been dismantled, its components distributed in glass vases, drinking glasses, jars, and bowls. Everywhere I looked, there was color and care. The room smelled like frangipani, jasmine, and Charlie. Sweet, humid, alive. It was quiet, but not empty. It was walking into promise. And there she was, Chalermwan, reclined on the bed, face towards the door on her side. Radiant, ethereal, draped in the most beautiful lingerie I'd ever seen. The candlelight turned her skin to glowing amber, her presence quiet yet commanding. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. Her eyes met mine and held them, steady and sure. Then, with the smallest curl of her finger, she beckoned me forward. No drama, just a wordless invitation to come home. Later, beside her in the hush and flicker of the room, I lay, barely awake. Her breathing was soft, sweet, and steady against my shoulder, her hand resting lightly over my chest, grounding me in something I'd been missing. I literally stared up at the ceiling, at the slow moving shadows, and tried to take stock of how quickly everything had changed. Just weeks ago, I was wrapped in saffron robes in the jungle, rising to chants in the disciplined, scheduled monastic life, days shaped by peace, structure, intention. Now this. Bangkok buzzed outside the window. My belly was full of fire and flavor. Candlelight danced on the walls. And Charlie. Her warmth, her grace, her easy musical laugh filled me to the brim. The contrast should have been jarring, but it wasn't. It felt like continuum, like I hadn't abandoned the monk, but had absorbed him and carried him into a new kind of reverence. Bangkok had cracked me open with a rib splitter, not with spectacle, though there was plenty of that, but with small moments, disarming collisions of pure, honest intimacy and surprises in many guises. It wasn't just the temples, the food, or the frenetic poetry of the city in all its glory. It was, most of all, the people, the moments in between, those threads of human connection that wove through everything else and made the heat, the noise, the uncertainty all worth it. I didn't hate the city anymore. Not even close. I was falling for it. Hard. Piece by insane piece. Tomorrow I'd return to Wat Arun, this time with Chalermwan by my side, if she'd have me. We'd see it in daylight, walk its stone terraces, trace the silhouette that had burned its way into memory and fantasy from across the river. After that, who knew? Thailand was wide open before me, one footstep at a time, one breath, one dish, one connection at a time, but only if Charlie was by my side. All right, guys, 3.5 hours, and we just made it through part one of this chapter. Yes, this chapter is quite the chapter. What I say, I was at 52% when I started. I'm now to 66%, and we get up to 81% before we get through the book. So we'll probably finish this chapter on the next stream. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, this was a deep dive into him getting into Bangkok, getting involved in some of the normal things that he did, and finding something unexpected in a new love. How nice. Well, thank you to all of you. As always, the greatest gift that you could give me is the gift of your time. And I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours, whether it was for 5 minutes or the full 3.5 hours of this one. You know, I normally do these book streams. I read for about an hour and a half and then I'm done. 3.5 hours tonight, and we're only halfway through that chapter. So I hope you guys will come along and join me on Tuesday when we will pick the book back up and continue our reading in part two of that chapter. Until then, again, Tuesday, wherever you happen to be, I hope that you are keeping warm, or if you happen to be somewhere warm, you're keeping cool. And have yourself a fantastic weekend ahead. Again, thank you so much for the time that you spent with me. Make sure that you do stop out there and give some support to the author. You can find some of the links to him on the YouTube or Rumble videos, or you can just head over to Amazon and look up Mr. Lawrence Davidson, and you'll be brought probably to his author page, and he may have some of the links there. Give him some support. If you've been enjoying this and you reach towards the end, make sure you give it a review too. Reviews mean everything, especially to indie authors. Makes a huge difference in their worlds and the discoverability of their books. If you've been enjoying this reading, make sure you share that with your friends as well. And if you haven't, hit that subscribe button. youtube.com/at Sir Arminius. Your support helps me to continue to feature these fantastic books by these wonderful indie authors. Until I see you again next time, a big thank you to Gimme, the Raging Aussie, A Beer the Pro, and then I think I saw AC Sherman stopped in here at some point, and Andy Norman, 6275, for coming in and chatting and saying hello. Have a great evening, everybody, and I will see you guys all again really soon. Reminder, this chapter, if you did miss it, will be up on the YouTube channel a little bit later this evening. Have a great night, everyone.